Hi, I'm Kaytlyn,
And I'm Brianna.
and welcome to the Readers Clubhouse where we revisit our childhood favorite content.
So, this is a special Halloween episode. I could only hear the first couple seconds of that.
No.
I think
Let
it
me
was
try it
too...
again.
Okay.
Ooh. Is that better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay.
So to start us off as our transition question,
Sure.
what is, Kaytlyn, your most memorable Halloween costume that you've worn?
Most memorable.
Yeah.
I have two. Okay. I know that that's not the question, but I'm gonna talk about both of them. The first one was in high school. In high school, my nickname was Fruit Loop for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons that we don't need to talk about on this podcast at
Maybe
this
one
particular
day.
time. I think it's unnecessary. Um, so I one year for Halloween dressed up as a box of Fruit Loops. So I had a box that I painted red, and then I had a like the cereal box cover thingy from a box of Fruit Loops that we'd bought, I think just for that occasion, because I don't actually eat Fruit Loops all that often.
Yeah.
They're a bit of a treat. And so yeah, I dressed up as a box of Fruit Loops, and I had the hat that had been the reason I was named Fruit Loop, which was crocheted by you. I was gonna say
Oh,
yours
yeah.
truly,
That's right.
but that's not how that phrase goes. By you.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I mean that was basically it. So that's probably, I actually saw a picture of that recently. I was going through my photos and I was like, the memories. Wow. The other one was when I was at college for our American listeners. And the best I can describe it is a 30-year-old soccer mom who took her children to school but realized she forgot the kids. Um, is the best way that I was able to describe that because I straight up was wearing just some like crazy print leggings, a baggy t-shirt, a bathrobe that I had brought. I had a big black purse full of stuff. I had a little coffee mug, sunglasses. My hair was up in a bun that was a bit not, it wasn't like a messy bun, but it was like a tight bun that was like my hair's little flyaways were flying everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's because at my university we had, I think, a basketball game or something like that on a Halloween or near it or something, and so it was like a
Mhm.
dress up thing, and I'm just not really a costume person
Yeah, same.
necessarily, and so I was like, I dressed up like one of my mom friends, so that was a fun. I actually really liked that one. One time I dressed up as a basic white girl. Um,
The easiest to do for
It
us.
really was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a brown sweater and a big hat, and I got Starbucks on my way to the party.
Oh
And I
my
was like, I'm
gosh.
a basic white girl. And they were like, Caitlin. I was like, hey, it's okay. I'm pretty sure it was also a themed party. And
Oh,
I just said I was a time traveler. Time traveling basic white girl.
oh my gosh.
Title of my new sci-fi podcast. That would actually be really funny.
Oh,
Oh man, can you
that would be
imagine?
hilarious.
A
Yeah.
basic Starbucks white girl going to space and
Mhm.
meeting aliens. Brianna. That would be so good. Oh my
It would be
gosh.
hilarious. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, what about you, Brianna? What's your most memorable Halloween
Okay.
costume or costumes, plural?
The first is kind of dumb.
I love it.
Uh, okay. So when I was younger, our parents at one point really got into us not consuming non-Christian things.
Hmm.
And there was a couple of times, but like there's weird bits of Christian media, and I had to choose the one that was weird. Like
Oh, is this Bible Man?
it is Bible Man, but
Oh,
I
yes.
didn't dress up as Bible Man.
No, who did you dress up
Uh,
as?
I dressed up as Bible Woman because there
Oh,
was in the one DVD or whatever we had that was that. It's because she was actually like so being serious about this, guys, yeah, that was just silly. I dressed up as Bible woman or whatever
Yeah.
and stuff. But like it was a weird Christian media
Uh-huh.
thing that like, and I was obsessed with superheroes, so it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
cool, weird Christian media thing that kind of centered around the thing that I like and stuff. And then they had this like, it was like, to me, it was like this really cool woman dressing.
Mm,
I don't even remember what her backstory or anything was, and
yeah.
whatever was going on through like I think my middle school brain, because that might have been like I was either an older kid or somewhere in middle school, I think, when this happened.
Yeah.
That was like she's so cool and stuff.
Yeah.
And she was also a black woman, which was
Oh, awesome.
like I don't think at that point I could think of any characters that really stood out to me as like who are non-white. Like
Yeah,
there may have been, I if I'm just not thinking about it and
sure.
stuff.
I can only think
Uh
of one off the top of my head.
yeah, so like
That's
it
Storm from X-Men.
yes. Yeah, that actually might be another because Storm has always been one of my favorites
Yeah.
since I watched the 90s
Yep.
cartoons.
Yeah, same.
So it wouldn't be surprised if like strong black superhero woman
Yeah.
like definitely like I was like, oh, gravitate towards you
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. And I don't remember much about her. I just remember, oh, I dressed up as her XYZ
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's like I could see part of like the reasons why I was really drawn to that character, even though I don't remember like her deeply, but just like the kind
Yeah.
of aspect of that. So like I went super niche that year, obviously. And then
Fantastic.
I know, yeah. And then when I was doing a bunch when I was still with a part of the church and like doing a bunch of youth group things and stuff, which is honestly one of the few things that I do miss about being a part of church is
Yeah.
like the wild youth group events and
Yeah.
stuff. Uh
So
it
true.
yeah. The things I enjoyed were like the wackiness because one of our good friends, Pam, was the youth leader, and
Mhm.
Pam is one of the most creative people that I know
Absolutely.
and would have some of the best events and stuff. So we always would have like a Halloween thing. And I'm not a big dress up person either,
Yeah.
but I think that the theme or something was like mixing two things that you wouldn't think about or something like that. I don't remember what it was.
Cool.
So I dressed up as a mermaid genie is what
Okay.
yeah. And I like had this like flowy kind of like blue colorful outfit and I had like shoes that a lot of people would assume a genie would wear, kind of a
That's
thing that
really
I
cool.
found at Value Village. So that one was actually me taking my creativity, which I don't do very often with like dressing up,
Yeah.
and actually like trying to do something with it. And I don't know if I have a picture lying around because I'm terrible at making sure I have pictures taken of me
Yeah.
with stuff. But that's just one that I was like, oh yeah, I actually like went out of my way to um make something, and I actually still think it was pretty interesting
Yeah.
like thing with that and stuff.
Yeah.
So those are my two Halloween costumes.
Those are both really good, Brianna.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rel, I mean, you're the one who leads the next few sections, so
That's true.
you're kind of taking the lead on this episode. So,
That is very true, which I was not expecting going into this. So to start us off, guys, this is a very different vibe than what we generally do.
it's true.
And we're going like this is the book I feel like that is the oldest, the oldest published book that we have read up like that we've talked about on this podcast and stuff. It
When
is.
was Emma published?
I feel like Emma was published after this. I feel it was like in the
Okay.
1820s. Uh, but that's actually a good point. So while Kaytlyn is doing that, I'm gonna intro what we're doing. So guys, we're gonna be talking
Oh,
about
Emma's older.
Frankenstein. Emma's older.
Emma was
Okay,
published
I
in
was wrong.
1815.
1815.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So
Frankenstein. But I'll say this.
yeah.
It's the oldest book that we'll talk about that we actually read.
Yes.
Because
That's a
Emma, we
good
tried to
point.
read
We tried to
and
read.
we didn't get through it.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, we gave ourselves like 3 months to read.
Yeah.
And we weren't watching three different movies and trying to make
Yeah.
an episode of that as well. So,
Yeah. Also, Frankenstein, at least the version that we read, I don't know what a standard version, because the print was really small, the one we read,
Oh,
under 200 pages and stuff.
the
So
words were so small.
the words were so small. I'm sorry that I got that version from
No,
work.
I love the look of it, Brianna. It
Yeah.
looks really cool. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and find, like when we put this on YouTube, I'll try and find the this particular cover, like a picture
Yeah.
of this, or maybe even take my own picture because it is really cool.
Yeah.
It's just the words, they be so small.
Yeah. I agree. So to get into it, because there's a lot to go over with this one, guys.
Yeah, buckle in for
Buckle
a
up.
long episode.
Yeah. So we I'm not a big classics. I want to put out a disclaimer stuff. I'm not a big classics reader. It never has particularly been something I'm super interested in. I don't have anything wrong with the classics.
Yeah,
I like specifically, it's just I like stories that are like
written in the
store
last
like
50 years.
that, and also just like that have kind of I hesitate to say the hero's journey plot, but like that kind of a thing. And it just I classics are not my thing.
Mhm.
So we're neither of us are experts on any of this. We are not people who've done a crap ton of research into like the minute details, all the references. I don't know things about like everything about Mary Shelley, the author's past, or like all that kind of thing. I will
Yeah,
be talking a little bit about that with her, but
yeah, we will.
overall, like we are not an expert on this book. It has been around for over 200 years at this point. There is so many different nuances to that. If you're watching this or listening to this actually at any point on any of our platforms and you're like, wait, what about, why didn't you mention this, that kind of a thing, share your thoughts, because
Yeah,
we'd love to see it, to see them read that stuff. But please give us a little bit of grace because we do not know
yeah.
everything, and we are not trying to be experts on literature in this podcast.
Nope.
It's just us being readers consuming things that we've read in the past. In this case, this is a Kaytlyn nostalgic read because
Yeah,
she read it in high school, I believe,
yeah.
is what it was. Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
funny to me now that you're the one taking the lead on this one. It is technically my nostalgic thing, but
that
I
is
honestly didn't
true.
think about that.
Yeah, it's not something we really discuss too much. So to get into it, we're gonna go over the stats like we usually do, and there's actually a couple of pieces of things that we'll dive a little bit deeper into than we normally would with this. So, release year. This book was released in 1818 by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. I know a lot of people may not, a lot of people just say Mary Shelley, but she is credited as Mary Wollstonecraft
Mhm.
Shelley in some of the stuff. And Wollstonecraft is her mother's maiden name.
Yeah,
And I'll go over that in just a second.
yeah.
So, and then this is considered a gothic, and I say horror because it wasn't necessarily labeled as a horror when it first came out. It was just a
Sure.
gothic story. But it still like had that elements of horror, and it is a lot of the time shelved in horror sections when you're looking for it.
Mhm.
It is also considered an early work of sci-fi before that genre was really like labeled as sci-fi, because it does have elements of that. It taps into science
Yeah.
and all that kind of a thing. As we know, Victor Frankenstein makes the monster using science in a sort of fantastical way, as far as we know. And then also, I wanted to mention that this has an alternative title called The Modern Prometheus,
Hmm.
which is very interesting. I didn't look too deeply into why that is, though I have some thoughts, because knowing the Prometheus myth, it kind of like, I feel like taps into
Yeah.
uh,
Fire from
a
the
character.
gods.
Yeah, like being having the consequences of basically doing what a god is accredited as doing and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I have
that would be my
thoughts.
okay. Uh so do you want to share your thoughts about that
No,
real quick, Mom?
I have thoughts. I think as we're sort of going through the story that
Okay.
I'll sure.
Okay, cool. So I do want to go a little in depth with Mary Shelley, because she is the writer of this of the book, and it's really important. And as unlike a lot of the other authors that we've gone over, I am not as familiar with her,
Mhm.
but I do have a couple of odd little things where peripherally I am can not I have like interacted with her work, quote unquote, or like people
Sure.
who I've interacted with people who've interacted with her work. So, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, she was born in 1797 and died in 1851. And she wrote a number of other things. She was married to Percy Shelley, who was a romantic poet during his time and stuff. And we're not going to go into their marriage. I've heard
Mhm.
multiple different things about that whole thing and stuff. That's not what we're going to talk about.
Sure.
So, the circumstances behind the creation of Frankenstein was Mary Shelley and a group of other young 20 and under something, like 25 and under somethings, were like in a like some property or something like that. They were like staying together. It was two girls and three guys. One of them was Lord Byron. A lot of people know him. Mary Shelley knew him and like was like interacted with him a lot.
Mhm.
This whole group were like young kind of like writers and artists, and at some point one of them was like, hey, let's write a scary story basically. And so all of them came up with this stuff, and that was the genesis of the Frankenstein story. Was this like basically, I say challenge, but I don't know necessarily if it was like a challenge, but just like a sort of a thing where they are like, yeah, let's do something. And so that's why Mary wrote this originally and stuff. And she, mind you, when this happened, she was only 18.
That's
So
just crazy to me.
yeah,
Always, every time I hear that, it's just crazy to me.
yes, yeah. Uh, Mary had a very tumultuous upbringing. Her mother died around the time she was born and stuff. I can't remember if it was like a little bit like after she was born or like she was alive for a little bit longer. I think it was a little bit after she was born. She never really had she didn't have a relationship with her mother, and then also had she had a tumultuous relationship with her father, who got remarried and then essentially like ignored her because his new wife was like, hey, you're paying too much attention to her and stuff. So like Mary had a like her lots of trauma, let's just say, which I feel like comes through, especially her being
What?
18 writing this. Like she was what we consider an older teenager at that point and stuff. While I know society back then might have like considered her basically an adult and
Absolutely.
everything, I am like, she, even at 18, a lot of people's brains are like still figuring stuff out and everything. So she's 18 writing this, and has like huge, probably like issues with abandonment and various other stuff. And I strongly feel like that stuff very much influenced some of the themes of Frankenstein. I'm not
Mhm.
saying everything, but I do feel like that was a part of it.
Yeah.
But I also could be projecting a little bit,
What?
possibly. Who knows? So
What?
I know. So that's just kind of like the bare bones of Mary Shelley and like the what I looked into. Now, a couple of things I want to bring up before we move
Hmm.
on to the actual
Which
chunk.
Brianna knows far more about than the actual Mary Shelley.
Very true, yes. I'm actually gonna bring up two things. The first one is, and this is the one you don't know what I was gonna say yet. The second one is something we already talked about. First
Yep.
one. So my friends, some of my friends are really like specifically our friend who actually has been on the podcast,
Hmm.
Lee, loves literature and like gothic stuff and like horror and has read Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And we played a D&D campaign that was essentially like Victorian England, but
Mm.
make it D&D.
Yeah.
I played a centaur. So like
Classic.
that's yeah, that's like giving a frame of reference, but like Victorian centaur. Like think
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But one of our group's first adventures was going to Mary Shelley's funeral because it
Ah,
was set the year she died, literally the
oh,
day that she
interesting.
died. Yeah. So or like it was her during her wake or something like that.
Okay.
So that's that my friend included some Victorian history in within this campaign, and that was a lot of fun and stuff.
That's not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, not surprising at all. Then the other thing for those of anybody that might be a game nerd,
Mm-hmm.
anybody play Persona games?
Mm.
I fell in love with those games during like 2017. Not gonna go fully into that because we might have those as like season 2 podcast episodes, possibly. We'll see. we're projecting possibly Brianna putting that into the ether of something we might do, but maybe not. So the Persona games, they're a JRPG, so Japanese role-playing game. They have a lot of themes about self and like identity and like
Mhm.
various other stuff. And there's the specific group of characters who are kind of like these ethereal beings who are like basically help along the main protagonist in each game. And the specifically the final three, the more recent three games, 3, 4, and 5, they have characters whose names are from the Frankenstein book.
Mhm.
And literally the guy who runs the Velvet Room, as it called, his name is Igor. And
Mhm.
so Igor is 100% a movie character, not a
Yeah.
book character.
Yeah.
But all of the other side characters within that room in those three games, which is usually like maybe one other person, sometimes two, but they have names actually from uh characters in the book and stuff. Like
Yeah.
literally book the most recent game 5 makes reference to Elizabeth Lavenza
Yeah. Yeah.
uh and stuff. So those of you that know the lore, you're like, oh yeah, that was actually a really funny thing when I realized that. I think
Yeah.
I read it somewhere or somebody told me and stuff, but that just it made me laugh. And then now I'm reading Frankenstein finally. So and I know way more about Persona than I do about
Yeah.
Frankenstein. It's tapping into a couple of things for me. So
Yeah.
that was a fun thing. Uh so guys, before we get into the meat of what we're going to be doing, Kaytlyn has something to say, and then
I
I'll
do.
explain what we're going to be doing going forward. Yes, Kaytlyn.
Yes. I just my favorite Frankenstein memory, I should
Mm,
say, is because my interaction with Frankenstein was in high school. We read it in my English AP English class, and one of my favorite activities that I got to do during these classes is they would make us, because they didn't make us, they would assign us that we had to make videos for
yeah,
things. So we did one for Romeo and Juliet when I was in a freshman. Um, I believe sophomore year would have been Much Ado About Nothing, which maybe we
ooh.
should read that and talk about that at some point. And
We
we
could
could
also
watch
the
the Kenneth Branagh
movie
movie. Yeah, 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 yeah. We should add
Much
that
Ado
season two.
Nothing. My most I Yeah, love
Yeah,
that.
100%. Yeah, we
Season
should add
2,
that.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm glad we're on board there. Um, but it must have been my junior year probably. I don't remember exactly. We did video of Frankenstein and
Oh, I remember you telling me about this. Yeah.
it was just really fun. I was Victor and the the
You
friend
you would you would play a good Victor.
emotional instability. Is that what you're talking about? The
You
desire to
you
make
bring
yourself a best friend?
you I don't think that was his goal, but
That wasn't
like
his goal. No.
but you could bring the energy is what
Yeah, I
I
could.
mostly was going with.
I love that. I was actually at our my friend, your nemesis,
Oh
Ben's
yeah.
wedding a few weeks ago. Because
Congratulations,
we're
Nemesis.
congratulations, you guys. When this comes out, you'll have been married for 2 months already, but because we're recording this way sooner than Halloween, actually.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I there we were doing a dance. I'm not going to explain all of that, but they
No, yeah.
said put your most energetic person in the middle of the three people, and I was
Yep.
like, it's probably me. I regret that because I was the one that was moving the whole time, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
my heart rate is so high right now. I'm covered in so much sweat, and most of it's mine, but some of it's not. Um,
Oh,
oh yeah. Anyway, what I was gonna say is, I played Victor, and then because where I lived was near cranberry bogs, the girl whose house we were
yeah.
recording at had a cranberry bog outside, just in the back. And so we went out at dusk, like twilight time. The sun was gone behind the clouds, but there was still some light. There was fog from just being on a bog. And so I was out digging in like my big welly boots and
Yep.
big because we were borrowing some man's welly rubber boots. And then her mom or something like that was a nurse, and so we had big scrubs. And so I was just out there with a shovel in scrubs and big boots, like digging, like I was digging up the grave or like the graves of the bodies. and I had a surgical mask. My hair was all long and sort of like wet and a bit ratty. And then there was the scene where one of the friends who was playing the monster, basically,
Mm.
was on the table, and I had a bunch of tools around me. They're so dumb. It's like a hammer, like a crowbar, just really like even like kitchen implements, like a pair of tongs. I remember the pair of tongs,
Yeah.
and that was a fun time. And I just like we did a time lapse of me just working on the body, and then it was
Yeah.
very much based on the movie, not based on the book, because I did the whole "It's alive! It's
Yeah.
alive!" thing, which we'll talk about because that is not all what happens in the book,
No.
and I have some thoughts on the discrepancies between the film produ
Yeah.
portrayals and
And I've never
the book.
seen the actual film that the original film
Yeah,
that was made and stuff. So I have no, like I have pop culture frames of references
yeah,
that I am aware. Like again, making a reference to Igor, he is
yeah,
not a character in the book whatsoever. So like I know a lot of those pop culture references, but I've never actually watched the movie, so I
yeah,
don't know all
yeah.
of them. Yeah.
I am pretty sure I have watched the movie. I've definitely watched Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, maybe not the first movie. I might have watched something else. I don't know. I've watched some media from it. Um, and it is just very different. So, why don't
Yeah.
you tell the listeners how are we structuring this episode? Because it is a little bit different because
Yeah.
you had a bit of a struggle yesterday when you were
Okay.
writing the summary.
So, guys, you know how I write an outline summary thing so that you guys can kind of do experience a basic version of the story so you're not
Mhm.
lost if you've never read or consumed this. Again, you can always skip these things if you want to, if you just want to
True.
experience and stuff. It's better to have read the book and then come to the episodes a lot of the time, but you do you. We appreciate any
Girl,
listeners.
sometimes we don't even do that.
Yeah, that's true. Uh,
Oops.
so so the way that we're gonna do it this time, because there's so much information in this,
So much.
even when I cut out certain things, there's still a lot. Like it like the our basically like episode outline generally is like a page and a half and
Yeah.
stuff, maybe 2 pages, and this ended up being 3 pages because there's just so much in each of the sections of the story going on that it was hard for my brain to be like, yeah, but you need to mention this before you move on like to
Yeah.
the next bit and stuff. So what we're gonna do, the story is broken up largely into 4 sections. Technically it's kind of 5, but I wrapped the last 2 up in the same like bit and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
The first part is a series of letters, and yes, that's still kind of a part of the first volume, as it's called, but I consider them their own thing because they intro into the story. Then volume 1, volume 2, and then volume 3, which does also end in letters, but the opposite of the first part, I included them in volume 3.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's the structure of the book. What we're going to do is I'm going to do the outline of the section, then we're going to discuss the section and some of our
Great.
thoughts behind that bit, and then we're going to move on to the next section. So it's not just me reading something for like 12 minutes, however long the first Redwall one was. I don't remember. So it's
Throwback.
yeah. So if you didn't get the reference, go back and listen to episode 1. But yeah, so I wanted to like save you guys and myself from just talking for a
Mm.
long chunk and stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing. So, are you ready, Kaytlyn?
I'm so ready, Brianna. Let's do this.
All right. So, we're starting with the letters. Our story starts with a series of letters written by a ship captain named Robert Walton to his sister Margaret. Through the letters, we learn that he has set out with the goal to explore where no one has gone before, the far north. As he begins this journey, he gathers a crew and they set out. But he often laments that he has no bosom friend to share his hopes, dreams, and goals with. Despite this lack, they do set off, and as they gain access into the frozen wasteland, a lone sled is spotted upon the ice, with a large personage riding it. They are astonished by this, as it is thought to have been uninhabited at this point, but the figure quickly disappears from view. Not long after, the ice shifts, and a different sled is spotted. It was caught up in the breaking ice, and the crew fished out its rider, a haunted looking but beautiful man. As he recovers, Robert and him become fast friends, but Robert can see that he is plagued by something. The man finally relents to the questions and tells his tale. So that's the letters.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts you wanted to talk about with the letters?
So many thoughts, Brianna. Just it was crazy reading this because I I do not remember the letters being a part of the book. Like that was not something I remembered from my time reading this in high school. Now,
Yeah,
granted, I mean, it was like 10-ish or more years ago at
yeah.
this point. And so of course I'm not going to remember. And I've not read it since, so I forgot. But there's just a few things in particular. Did you have thoughts on this?
I do, but I'll let you go first because I've
Okay.
talked a lot already.
Okay. I thought it was really interesting. And of course, one thing that we know about Mary Shelley is her mom before she died
Mm.
was a feminist and
Yes, of her
um
time.
of her time. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I had a friend, I mentioned that too recently, and he was like, she would not be considered a feminist in this day and age. And I was
no.
like, that is absolutely hilarious to me.
Hmm.
One, that a man said that,
Yeah,
and two, that that's so true.
yeah,
But of course, this was 210-ish years ago. Well, it would have
yeah.
been more than that because it would have been during her mom's time. So even like
Also,
250 years ago ish.
I think I forget when the Victorian era started and everything, but like
Not sure.
it actually may have just I can't remember. But like this is like during like either the very beginning of Victorian era or like no, her mom, sorry, this is when her mom's time. It may even be like just before Victorian era.
It
So like and that
was
was
no,
a
it was
very
after. It was yeah, Victorian era was 1837 and then 19 to
oh
1901.
and so with her mom, definitely pre that.
Pre-Victorian, yeah.
Yeah, so whatever the era was before
Was it
Victorian,
Gregorian maybe?
Gregorian,
Was it
like
King George
that makes sense, I think. I don't know a ton about English history, just
or
peripheral
Georgian?
stuff.
Excuse me. Yeah, it was yeah, Georgian.
Yeah. But like the time that her mother grew up
Gregorian,
in,
Caitlin.
she was a like more progressive
Yeah.
than with their time, but that's also is very like that time in England and everything was very like lots of like what's the right word? It's very strict about a lot of things, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely there are people who are in their time considered progressive that when you look back, it's like that actually wasn't. But I mean, that's a whole different discussion about
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
sociology and demographics and like the progression of society and culture in the
Yeah.
world and how one generation's progressives will be the next generation's conservatives because that is just how humanity works. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things just from the start of the letters because the letters frame the actual story, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's letters from Walton to his sister.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. We never actually meet Margaret. We don't.
No, yeah.
She's only a character in that she's a name that was
Yeah.
mentioned. I think it's interesting that it was written to a sister rather than like a wife or something. I
Yeah.
think in particularly that this book is as much about family as it is
Hmm.
about the philosophical questions around like life and death and
Yeah.
like love and belonging and things like that. So it is
Yeah.
about family in a way that I honestly didn't anticipate it being about.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. It is also like one of the big themes I was pulling from this are family and friendship. That those
Yeah.
are, and we'll talk about your quote
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
Mention that whenever you want to. But the fact that so much of this is bound up in community,
Hmm.
and Walton is a really good. It makes sense why Walton is drawn to Victor and why
Yeah.
Victor in the end calls him friend because Walton is searching for that thing actually that I would say Victor had, which Victor
Yeah.
had a loving family. Victor had the best friends that he could ever have thought of.
Yeah.
His best friend Henry, his um best friend, sister, cousin, wife, Elizabeth.
Not as weird as it sounds, guys, but it's still a little
It's
weird.
kind of weird. It's a little bit weird. Um, so that's really interesting. I also I basically took notes and I put sticky notes, and so I'm gonna read
Yeah.
just really interesting how Walton is journaling. Like he's in search of a friend to share his joys and his sorrows with, and he's doing these things like on paper, and he's journaling and almost writing these laments of um so he says, I shall commit my thoughts to paper, it is true, but that is a poor medium for the communication of feeling. I desire the company of a man who would sympathize with me, whose eyes would reply to mine. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I have no one near me, gentle yet courageous, possessed of a cultivated as well as of a capacious mind, whose tastes are like my own, to approve or amend my plans. How would such a friend repair the faults of your poor brother? I think just that was really refreshing to me because a lot of, and even in this one, there's a little bit of romance between, well, Victor and Elizabeth,
Yeah.
R.I.P. But and of course in this time with the romantic poets and there's a lot of, I know romantic doesn't necessarily mean like love as in romance and things like that.
Yeah.
In terms of talking about this genre of poetry. But I just thought it was really interesting, this desire, and especially being written by a woman, that there are some really key differences in men written by women than men written by men. And I find it interesting that even 200 years ago, I could see one of those differences. I mean, I feel like you and I have maybe talked about this a few times. Um, but it is interesting to me that she's writing about this man writing to his sister, but
Yeah.
ultimately he's saying that he's longing for a friendship that would, I guess, soar to the heights of intellect and discovery and exploration and things like that, that would desire the same things as he does. And as somebody who,
Yeah.
like, when I was a kid, would have said I longed for the same thing, not necessarily having the language to express that, but for someone, I was like, I want to have a friend who understands me, who sees the things that fill me with joy and things that bring me sorrow and can
Yeah.
feel those same things. I just found
Hmm.
that really interesting as a framing narrative for the story
Yeah.
because again, and also to compare Walton and Victor, Victor had that, which we'll get into maybe when you talk about volume one. I just find Walton in particular a really interesting character, and the fact that we
Yeah.
only get him for a few letters. It's one of
Yeah.
those, you know how people will write like somebody's written a story about like the other Bennett sisters or something like that,
Yeah.
and there's things like that. I would love to read or even just talk to people about like Walton's story on his return to England, his return to his sister. Like what is that like for him having had this particular experience and like his sister being like, "What nonsense have you sent me? What is this insanity?"
Yeah. I actually have a couple things to add to
Yeah,
that. Frankenstein is open to the public. I forget what it's
public
called,
domain.
but like public domain. So like people can
Yeah.
do whatever they want with it. I mean, there's a new movie coming out that's a lot more closer to the book than I think any other movie that's ever been made.
Okay.
And it's by Gilmore. I can never say his first name. Del Toro.
Oh,
Anybody?
Guillermo del Toro.
Yes, yeah. Creator of Hellboy, or the maker of the Hellboy movies, director of those XYZ and stuff. So I've seen stills of it. It looks beautiful. I don't know if I'll watch it because I like it was a little bit easier to consume book wise than it probably would be a movie for me. That's just
Yeah.
because I'm not a horror person. But
Does it come out?
yeah, it's either I think already out
Oh
or
no, it's November.
November. Okay, it must be just early reviews people are talking about then, but the things that I've seen. So yeah, it's definitely very interesting the like with Robert. Oh, I remember the other thing I was going to say. So there's apparently did you ever do you remember League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which kind of took the premise of like what happened to these people after these classics, mostly like horror or adventure ones?
No, but also they have changed some key things I'm just seeing already in the cast.
Yes. Yeah, I know. There was conversations I've like heard about various things. I think people who truly love them probably won't be fully satisfied, but it's Del Toro, so like I'm
It's
not
gonna
surprised.
look good, but
Yeah,
also I'm that's fascinating.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he took creative liberties with it, and I don't know if there ever will be truly an adaptation that is like fully just about the story of Frankenstein, and it doesn't have
Sure.
somebody's like input about it and stuff, but I don't know. Uh but do you remember the of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Yeah, I've never seen it, but yes.
Yeah, so I was obsessed with that at one point, and I watched the movie so many times. But kind of in a similar vein, where various characters or large, most of them are side characters or like different versions of characters from classics. Like you got Tom Sawyer, Alan Quatermain. I forget the one girl from Dracula's name, that kind of thing. But in this one it's like an all woman cast, and it's like women from these gothic
Hmm.
stories largely, and Margaret is one of them, I guess.
Oh
And I
wow.
have some of my coworkers were talking about this, so I don't know exactly what happened in it. So like there are, I think, some people who tapped into those aspects of it, but I do think it'd be
Okay.
very interesting to see something about from Robert's perspective and like that
Yeah.
kind of a thing and stuff. And something I wanted to like kind of speak into with that is it's so funny because well, yes, we never actually meet Margaret. We actually do get insight into who she is as a person
Yeah.
because of the way that Robert talks in his
Yeah.
letters to her and stuff. And I don't remember if it's explicitly said, but I don't think that their parents are alive. And I kind of feel like Margaret has been more of like a mother to
Yeah.
him than a sister,
Yeah.
and you kind of get that through the way that he again talks to her. She's also married and has her own kids
Mhm.
too, so like she's definitely like the I have to have had been really responsible older sister, and this is my
Yep.
very up in the like head in the clouds younger brother vibe is what you kind of get between the two of them. So it's a very interesting relationship, but they still have a good relationship because
Yeah.
despite Robert still tells her all of this stuff in these letters and is like, Margaret, you're not going to believe this, but like this stuff happened.
Yeah.
And like all he like says that a number of times, like this is crazy. Like basically, this is crazy. Like I don't know if you'll believe me, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. And that just kind of shows how close they are,
Yeah.
despite like he's still going to tell her those things, or at least get it out and use her as a even use her as in a written form as a
Yeah.
sounding board for like his thoughts and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so that's I find that really interesting that like Margaret is like her whole own character
Yeah.
when you actually look at it, despite the fact that she never talks and never actually responds to anything.
Yeah. Yeah. We never get her perspective. We never get her
Yeah.
response. We don't get anything. But yeah, you're totally right. We what we know of Margaret we get through Walton's view,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than being a distant relationship, she is his closest friend and confidant. And
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful. And also I think it makes sense why he yearns for something more, because obviously
Yeah.
it is good to be friends with your siblings. I say that as obviously we are
Yes.
friends, and I'm also friends with our other siblings because we have more.
Yes.
But it's also good to have friends that aren't your siblings, because people who are
Yeah.
different from you, who were raised in different circumstances and understand different things, I think is really good. I think that was all really interesting. I love Walton as a male character. I wish in lots of ways, I actually, it's really funny because I see Walton is sort of the like character union of both Henry and Victor, where
Yeah.
he's got Victor's gung ho. Oh, there's a spider. So many spiders in this place.
Yeah.
Um,
It's we're coming to the end of spider season, thankfully.
yeah, praise God from whom all blessings flow. Anyway, so he's got the sort of exploration, the desire for knowledge, the desire to know more and to go out and explore that Victor had, which his exploration took him in a different direction, where Walton's takes him in the actual literal exploration of the far north, because he's searching for
Yeah.
paradise. And actually, there's this line that I really love that he says, "There's something at work in my soul which I do not understand." There's
Mm-hmm.
desire for paradise, for the far country, um, which for me, I'm like, that's so biblical, is that we have this exploration for paradise, for this to go back to Eden, to go back to this time that was before, and this desire for perfection, this because he's thinking that in the north there might be this, because it's closer to the sun, maybe there will be um
There's a lot of
perpetual
like
paradise and
yeah, there's a
tropic.
lot of stories and like myths that like there is a good country
Mhm.
at the like the top of the world because
Yeah.
there's no way that it like it's just all frozen
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah, you have to go search it. It's almost like the journey to the center of the earth type thing as well. Like
Yeah.
there, so many of our stories are framed with this desire to go out to search for paradise and to find perfection. Yeah, which I find really interesting, and that could be a whole discussion in itself. Yeah, and then I guess the last part of this section is meeting Victor for the first time and getting sort of his story. And I find it really telling that Mary started the story sorry, start introduce Victor in particular at his end because
Yeah.
he is haggard, he is dying, he is ill, he is
Yeah.
thin, he has lost everything.
Yeah.
And we see the beginning of his mania, his obsession
Hmm.
with the beast, the creature, the monster. And I wrote this little note that said I don't see how Walton sees Victor as a friend.
Mm,
And then immediately after that, it answers that question I have, and I was like, just kidding. Victor is the exact type of friend Walton was just lamenting the lack of.
yep.
So he says, my affection for my guest increases every day. He excites at once my admiration and my pity to an astonishing degree. How can I see so noble a creature destroyed by misery without feeling the most poignant grief? He is so gentle yet so wise. His mind is so cultivated, and when he speaks, although his words are cold with the choicest art, yet they flow with rapidity and unparalleled eloquence. So it's
Mm,
just this picture of he has just lamented in previous letter, I
yeah.
want a friend who shares my intellect and my desire, my passions, and all these things. And he finds in Victor this thing. And then he's telling Victor about how he would gladly sacrifice one man's soul for the exploration of the North, and it's worth it. And then Victor says, unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you drunk also of that intoxicating draught? Hear me, let me reveal my tale, and you will dash the cup from your lips. It's it's so good. As in it's so good as in it's so tragic. because
Yeah.
because it sets up what's about to happen and the
Yeah.
start of what's about to happen.
Or what has already happened.
Yes, sorry, what has already happened for Victor, but what is about to happen for us, what we're about to
Yeah.
see as we witness through his story. And then he says, "You are mistaken, my friend, if thus you will allow me to name you. Nothing can alter my destiny. Listen to my history, and you will perceive how irrevocably it is determined." I really find that fascinating.
Yeah.
And just the whole section, I was like, oh my gosh. It took me a while to get through just the first section because I was like, but there's so much to think about in just the
Yeah.
beginning few pages. And then I read the rest of the book and I was like, okay, this is why it took me like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and do you have any other thoughts you want to share on section one, or do you want to read
No, some of the ones
volume
I
one?
have actually are going to be better expressed at the very end when we come back to
Okay.
Robert and
Okay.
stuff. So I think that's kind of I'm
Great.
gonna wait.
Wait
All
for
right.
it. Okay. Sorry.
Uh-oh. Volume 1. Victor Frankenstein, for he is the teller of this tale, came from a loving home. His father was a wise older man, and his mother was a young woman who had gone through some hardships but found solace with the older Frankenstein. For a long time they traveled, Victor being born during this time, and even adopted a young orphan girl named Elizabeth, who became a playmate and a companion to the Frankenstein family. He also finds a good friend with a young merchant son, Clerval. As Victor grows, he is passionate about learning and finds himself drawn to old texts of science. He is told that they are only trash, but due to his rash and passionate nature, he continues to read these old texts. As he grows into a young man, he even goes off to college, far from his loving family and childhood home, and pursues the natural sciences, though sadly not before his lovely mother dies from an illness. Due to certain people looking down upon his interests, he pursues them relentlessly, and this dogged pursuit leads him to making a creature. As soon as he lays eyes upon the newly sentient being, he is sent into a sort of spiral. He ignores the creature and is sick for months. The creature disappears, and Victor's friend Clerval arrives and takes care of him. After he is healed from this, Victor sets off home since he has been gone for so long. But as he arrives, he finds that his youngest brother William has been killed, and a young woman named Janine, who had been a long
Justine.
time
It's Justine.
Justine.
We
Oh
keep doing
no.
this.
I think you infected me, Kaytlyn,
I
because I
think
didn't.
I did. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're gonna start that little bit over.
Okay. Oh, we should keep this in.
I'm going to start the thing over and you
Okay.
can decide what you're going to do with it. But as he arrives, he finds that his youngest brother William has been killed, and a young woman named Justine, who had been a longtime friend and companion to the family, was thought to be the killer. Victor eventually realizes that this may be tied to the being that he created. Justine, due to some circumstantial evidence, is tried and sentenced to death for William's murder, and Victor continues to decline.
Oh, you know what's funny is I put at the beginning of my book a little sticky note, and I have the
Mm-hmm.
death count in there.
You were right when you told me at the beginning who out of like Victor's immediate like friends and family lives at the end. Was your thing was correct. I was like,
Mhm.
I knew it was gonna be him.
Yeah,
Uh Despite him having very little screen time.
Eugene or whatever his brother's
Is
name is.
Ernest.
Ernest. Ernest. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's literally it.
Yeah. So this is like the set like giving some people a little bit more context. Victor spends a good chunk of the beginning explaining how his family came to be,
Yeah.
essentially. Like we find out his dad and his mom's backstory. We find out how they find Elizabeth, who was an orphaned. She was the product of a like fallen like noble essentially who'd been with a not as noble person, and she ends up with this like uh what is it, peasant family who loves her but like
Mhm.
can't give her what she was born into. And uh Victor's mother like basically like adores her and like brings her in, so that's how Elizabeth came into being and stuff. And then eventually they settle down and we see like in great detail Victor's like growing up and how he
Yeah.
like how his family is and stuff. And the part that gets me though, that I feel like is the seed of all of this, is when we it talks about the part where he starts looking into the things that he's
Mhm.
looking into. And I think the author is Cornelius Agrippa or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about this guy, but it's like older sciences that have at this point and even back then largely been disproven
Yeah.
and stuff. And it's very much like fantastical alchemist feel, I feel like is the vibe that it kind of got from that. And again,
Yeah.
I am not a historian, so I don't know all of the like the references are made about these people and stuff, and I don't fully understand them. But when Victor literally is like talking to his dad about this, his dad's like, "Oh, Victor, don't worry about that. That's just trash."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you never tell a child of any age that
Uh-uh.
the thing they are passionate about at that age is trash, because they
Yeah.
will immediately make that their whole personality, which is what
Yep.
happens with Victor. And so I'm like, older Frankenstein, why did you do this? You were the
Yep.
reason this all fell apart, because you did not, first of all, pay attention to the fact that your son continued to look into this stuff and became a part of his personality.
Yep.
And also was just like, Victor, it's trash. Literally, it's called trash in the book and
Yep.
stuff. So I was like, oh my gosh. So like Victor is to blame for a lot of like for
All
a
of
lot
it.
of the
All of
stuff.
it. No, no,
It's for
all
all
of
of it.
it.
He
Yes.
was the one that created the thing that caused all of the stuff to happen. But the origin of like the first domino to fall essentially was
Yeah.
his father telling him this and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, I agree and I disagree because
Okay.
I I do not think in any way we can blame his father because his dad
Okay.
because he had no idea that he didn't know that this was his son's obsession. He just told his dad
Yeah.
like
But that's
he
and
said yeah, he happened to find a volume of the works of Cornelius Agrippa and then he told his father he explained how he was excited about it and Victor does say, if instead of this remark, my father had taken the pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa had been entirely exploded and a modern system of science had been introduced. Blah blah blah. Under such circumstances, I should certainly have thrown Agrippa aside and have contented my imagination, warmed as it was, by returning with greater ardor to my former studies. Yes, I don't think we can blame his dad at all because
oh,
his
it,
I don't think we could
yeah.
put any sort of like if you just hadn't said that, like other than saying okay, but also if you just hadn't said that, like you never know.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think what I was more going for is that his parents at no point like engage, like he, because of what his dad said, and I'm not saying like his dad saying that didn't make Victor not do
Yeah.
certain things that he should have done after he did what he did
Yeah.
and stuff, but his dad at no point I feel like because of what his dad said, Victor hid his interests. He
Yeah.
didn't, he purposely like got really passionate about these things but kept them to
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
And that goes with my final thoughts on a lot of things is
Yeah.
he chose to remove himself
Yeah.
from the family unit in that way and not discuss the things that he was interested in
Yeah.
because of what his dad said. And it wasn't
Yeah.
his dad's intention. He was just like, oh, yeah, kind of a thing. It was a throwaway
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Because to him it was nothing. To him it
yeah,
was just like those are disproven. So it's
yeah,
just they're not good. And
yeah,
so it is that really interesting thing though of where why we have to be careful what we say in general to people, but especially to kids,
yeah,
because an offhand comment that to you means nothing might mean
yeah,
something significantly different to a child and might cause something like cause
yeah,
something in them. And I think we as people who are now adults and have to remember that one, we need to be careful with what we say, but we also need to remember that like when people have said things to us, unless we know for sure without a shadow of a doubt that it was with ill intent to us. Because Victor doesn't blame his father at any point. He does say, like, if he had
yeah,
explained this to me, maybe I would have not done all of this. But, like, everything that comes after, all of his choices, all of his studies, everything,
yeah.
he takes responsibility for. All
Yes,
the
that is
deaths are
true.
his own fault because yes, his father saying that may have sent him down this rabbit hole, may have sent him on this path, but it was Victor's choices that led him to these things. And so I
Yeah,
think for me, looking at that, I'm like, yes, there are things that people have said to me that have wounded me or hurt me or whatever, but actually, they're not responsible for how I respond or how I
yeah,
choose to hold that in me and how I choose to like whether I choose to let it go and not let it weigh me down as like a rock in my backpack,
yeah,
or whether I move on from it and say, you can say that and yes it hurt, but actually I'm not going to hold that really close to my chest. And I
yeah,
think especially because in our society these days it is very much we hold on tightly to grudges, we hold on tightly to things that people say to us and
yeah,
we don't let them go because it's either we consider it sacred so we have to hold on to it, or it's almost the sense of pride of like you've said I'm this thing but I'm gonna either a I'm gonna show you how bad I am or show you how much
yeah.
I'm gonna lean into this thing, which Victor I don't think his in his vindictiveness I don't think he was vindictive is what I mean.
No, yeah,
It's just like you said he fell into something so hard and then there's now the well not now well yeah now because we get the creature's first murders, there's the shame in him
hmm,
now as well because he bears through the rest. The moment the creature opens his eyes,
yeah,
Victor is filled with fear and shame
yeah,
and guilt and all the other things, and it is from that place that the rest of the book spirals
yeah.
really really darkly. Anyway, what are your other thoughts?
I literally wrote down at one point, Victor is a drama queen.
Oh, I might have also written that down.
Yeah, because like, and we'll talk probably more about this as it goes on and stuff. Like, I understand Victor. You know what? I'm gonna be real honest here.
Yeah, give it to me.
I think I understand Victor too well for
Hmm.
me to be sympathetic to him
Okay.
because unfortunately, my go-to way of dealing with certain things when they get too difficult is to just not deal with it.
Mm.
And when I run into characters like that, I already struggle sometimes with my own who I am kind of a thing at
Mhm.
times. That when I run into characters who deal with things the same way that I do, I have even less sympathy for them because in the end, I have very little sympathy for myself sometimes when I
Ah, okay.
don't handle certain things well. Whenever I run into characters like Victor, like I had a coworker, I think, who we were talking about it a little bit, and I think she really identifies with Victor and like has a lot of sympathy for him, possibly because maybe she deals with the same things. But like,
Yeah.
I feel like our two different ways of looking at it made me like, nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for her, like, to be a lot more sympathetic to Victor, and I could be wrong because we didn't like go too deep into it and stuff. But yeah, anytime I run into a character who either makes the same mistake more than twice
Mm.
or just ignores everything and doesn't actually deal with it.
Triggered.
triggered and stuff. And
Yeah.
so, and that's because I feel like I at times wish that I dealt with things better.
Hmm.
And so when I watch a character not deal with things after they've learned the lesson a couple of times,
Yeah.
it's rough for me to be sympathetic to them. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like I can say this at this point, when the initial interaction between the creature, the very first actual interaction they have between each other, which is the creature, Victor's in his bed and the creature comes into the
Hmm.
room and like reaches out to him,
Yeah.
and Victor ignores him
Yeah.
and stuff. Like it that also triggers me because I'm
That
like,
triggers you.
I know he freaking scares you. Later in the second part, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, the creature admits that he scares himself. You created him, kind of a
Yeah.
thing, and you bear responsibility for it. And yeah, that's I even in this first volume and stuff, it's very evident that while Victor is very aware of what's going on, he internally is taking responsibility for it. He is not taking responsibility in his actions. Like
Yeah.
literally multiple times, I was like, this is the whole. I feel like the whole point of the story, like, is this character who constantly is making choices that makes things worse and worse and worse
Mm.
as time goes on. So I don't feel bad about critiquing the way this, like, you should have, kind of a thing. Like it's not going to be written that way. It's already written this way and stuff.
Yeah.
But like literally at any point, Victor could have been like, guys, this crazy man that I ran into,
Yeah.
like I'm sure that he came after my family because of, and he could have come up with anything
Hmm.
and stuff. But instead, and he could have even, we see this actually, I don't mention this in the explanation actually now that I think about it. He tries to at the very end after everything that happens to tell somebody what's
Yep.
actually going on before he even gets to the Robert thing and
Yep.
stuff. And the man barely believes it, like
Of course.
barely believes him and everything,
Yeah.
which is understandable, but at no point, like, Victor would have had more people behind him, I think, if he'd done that earlier on,
Uh-huh.
but instead he lost his whole support system before he
Yep.
even made that step
Yep.
and stuff. So we'll probably talk about that more as we get to that part. But he had every opportunity before Justine was hung
Hmm.
to like be like, no, there's a madman on the loose. And
Yep.
he could have at any point inserted himself into the Justine thing, and he didn't.
Yep.
And like it was too late for William, but it wasn't too
Yep.
late for Justine.
It
And
wasn't.
he even expresses sympathies towards her and feels guilt and shame for
Yep.
it. But he at no point does anything to, one, try to relieve his guilt and shame,
Yep.
or to actually help the person who is a
Yep.
victim of his actions
Yeah.
in this stuff.
He's a coward.
He's a coward.
Yeah. 100%. I completely agree with you. It was one of the Justine episode was one of my most frustrating
Yeah.
moments with Victor because he had the chance to stand up for someone who could not stand up for herself,
Yeah.
and he chose not to. In fact, he almost got the courage to, but then he didn't, and he let
Yep.
his shame and his fear of what people were going to think and how would they take, and he let that block him
Yeah.
from stepping in to save Justine. So,
Yeah.
and I completely agree because I think that ties in, that triggers me for a variety
Hmm.
of reasons.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk. This is not therapy with Kaytlyn and Brianna.
Yeah.
But it is something, and it's one of the things I don't feel. I feel sympathy for Victor because he loses everything that he loves, and
Yeah.
we should feel sympathy for that.
Yeah.
However, I don't. It is his fault, and there were
Yes.
times when he should have taken responsibility for the actions that he made in
Yeah.
creating the creature, in rejecting the creature, in not stepping in to save Justine, and not telling anyone what was happening, which then leads to the death of person after person after person after person.
Yeah.
And there's so much in, and actually one of the biggest themes for me as I'm reading this is the difference, and you're gonna roll your eyes, but when a creator of something is
Hmm.
flawed, is, I'm going to say the word sinful or whatever, and creates life apart from the design that
Hmm.
life was made, right? Life is meant to come from a man and woman having a baby, okay?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to go into depth into that because that's not what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Relationships between, anyway, but like that's how life is is meant. You don't have children without that. And yes, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously in our science now we have test tube babies and all those other kinds of things, but
Yeah.
it's the way for like millennia that people have been having children is one
Yeah.
particular way. Anyway, skipping over that part, we're going to fast forward through that. But Victor decides to take it on himself. This is why it's modern Prometheus. He's going to
Yeah.
take, quote unquote, fire from the gods,
Yeah.
and he's going to make life in a way that is contrary. And not only is he making life contrary to the way it's originally meant to be made, he's
Mm.
also making it from dead things. He's robbing
Yeah.
graves. He's taking rotten flesh and bone and hair and all of these things, and he's creating life from death
Yeah.
rather than life from life. So where
Yeah.
when a baby is born, it's because a living person and a living person
Yeah.
had a baby together.
They consummated
Oh, yes,
the
there's the word.
relationship
Yes.
and
Amen.
it created another being. And
Yes.
there's like a lot of nuances with that. But like I do like the that aspect of the what you're saying is life should come from other life,
Yeah.
not from death.
Not from death. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think seeing, especially from sort of Enlightenment era and this sort of trend, actually we're coming now to the other side of the pendulum again, which I find really fascinating. But from the Enlightenment of this trend away from any sort of religion or spirituality or deity of any
Mm.
kind
Yeah.
into this sort of man-centric, man first, there's nothing but man, where man takes the place and form of deity and then creates things, right? We create
Yeah.
this life. And this is the question a lot of like artificial intelligence and all of these other
Yeah.
things of like can we manufacture life apart from humanity? Can we manufacture
Mm.
sentient cognitive life like humanity apart from in the way that it's it naturally the humanity naturally reproduces? And that is
Yeah.
the question of a lot of sci-fi stories, a lot of artificial intelligence and robots coming to life and all of these other things. That's the question. And I think
Yeah.
particularly looking at this book, for me, it actually journaled about this at one point because I was right in the middle of this section where Victor's creating the monster and thinking about how in as a Christian, when I look at how God creates humans, he doesn't create them from death. He doesn't create them from decay or for decay. It's
Yeah.
created out of dust essentially, but
Mm.
actually that's the formation of the body is from dust, but what
Yeah.
gives humans life is breath from God, is life from life. Exactly what we were saying is
Yeah.
life comes from life. um and the
Which is
difference.
which
Go
is
ahead.
funny because even other religions have like that same like that not exactly the same, but like that same just the life come from life kind of a thing. Like it's a common theme through most religions that like life comes from life and stuff because I think humans know that.
I see.
Uh
Okay.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going with that. I'm not trying to make one for one comparisons between all
Mhm.
the religions, but like I just feel like that is like a natural human concept
Yeah.
as life comes from life.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Which I completely agree. We know that, and
yeah,
which is why whenever we try to create life apart from life,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
no,
And right, all of our sci-fi movies and blah 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 blah, all those things. But I also find it really interesting because what Victor's doing is he's trying to create this life and he's creating it from decay, he's creating it from death, and then what he ends up creating, in part because the creation is corrupt from the beginning, but also because his rejection of the creation is what causes the monster to spiral, essentially. His
yeah,
his rejection of the creation is so I find that also interesting from a Christian perspective because what we have in the Christian story is
mm,
God creates man. Man, rather than God rejecting man, man
yeah,
rejects God,
mm,
and God has to, because of God being a God of order and like not chaos, there are
mm,
boundaries and lines that he puts in to creation. You have the laws of physics that govern the universe. Those are
mm,
laws, not theories, because gravity, without gravity everything's dead.
yeah,
I had a whole discussion about this one time actually with a friend, about like what would happen if gravity just suddenly turned off on planet Earth. And we had a weird conversation about that. But so there's just this order in creation, and then man rejects God, and yet still can't, you can't go outside the bounds of the physical created world that we have.
Yeah.
Um, and rather than God rejecting mankind and like all, he actually continues to pursue and draw near. Where Victor, when he creates the monster, he says he's afraid of the monster.
Yeah.
He's terrified of what he's created because it's an abomination. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's against creation. And so he flees from it. He rejects it. He shuns it. Um, and I know that maybe this is just my Christian worldview coming in real hard, real strong, but it was really interesting to me to read this. And of course, this is 200 years old. Like
Yeah.
this is from a time long before I was born, long before the
Yeah.
things that form and shape me were in terms of my family and my culture. Like American
Yeah.
culture was very different 200 years ago than it is today.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to me to see people still wrestling with that same question of what happens when a creator rejects the creation and what are the consequences of that?
Yeah.
Because ultimately the consequences are death, right?
Yeah.
You have William, poor child, young William, who is
Yeah.
innocent and perfect in all the ways. He's Victor's. I mean, I feel bad for Ernest because he's just kind of there. He's the
That
sole survivor, but
Ernest gets like so little screen time, and
I
even
know.
we'll go over that at the end. But yeah.
Okay. But William is this cherub of a child who is
Yeah.
just beloved by all because of his innocence and his youngness. And
Mm.
he is brutally murdered
Yeah.
by the monster. And it's just death. This is the thing is death begets death. You can't have
Yeah.
life begets life, and you can't get life from death because all that death begets is death.
Yeah.
Um, which is really fascinating.
I would I would say there is some nuance to that because sometimes when something dies, it does create more life and
Yes.
everything, but that's because that's also an aspect of nature is that
Yeah.
like even in death something still is providing something for something else in the
Yeah.
physical aspect and stuff. Like that's why we get compost,
Yeah. 100%.
like consuming flesh to like fulfill needs, that kind of a thing. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of other stuff with that.
Absolutely.
And then like when some like if a tree is dies, it can be used in multiple ways
Yeah.
to like that kind of thing. So like there is nuances to that. I don't feel like it's a one for one death, like from death there is no life kind of a thing. It's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of nuances to that and stuff. And I think it's because he used something that was already past the point of
Yeah.
like what it was. He was taking it in the direction it wasn't supposed to go
Yeah.
with the way it provided life
Yeah.
to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. And actually, there's a Bible verse that says, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, and I don't remember the rest of that verse, but basically it's let me look it up really quick because it's don't misquote scripture. It's my least favorite thing. Yes, okay, it's John 12:24. And it says, we're not gonna do the KJV, no offense. We're gonna go.
I'm not going to say no offense because that is probably one of the worst translations, but
It is not one of the worst translations. It's just one of the least accurate in our modern English because it is not modern English. Anyway, um, but the NIV says, very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. So it's that, and of course, what Jesus is saying in this point is actually not talking about, plant some wheat and then you'll have a harvest. He's talking about
yeah.
himself that like he has to be dead and buried because unlike Victor, who can't create genuine life from death, and actually the
Yeah.
monster, as much as you could say it's genuine life, it really isn't. Jesus does end up having life from death because anyway, I could go off on a whole thing about Jesus being the
Yeah.
resurrection of the life, and I will go off on that because it's really great, and this is the whole point of being a Christian, is that is the point of and then I would actually say that these cycles of you have dead things that are bringing new life into, you have compost, you have things that are dying, you have even the human body decaying and the nutrients that the ground pulls from the decay and the worms and the animals and things like that. That there's these symbols in nature that speak to the resurrection and the fact that death begets death, but only God can bring life from death
Mm.
because he is the author of life. And so then you have the person who actually who penned life into being can be the one who says this is a dead thing that I'm going to make alive again.
Yeah.
Victor is not the author of life. He is an imitator of other things and other people who brings a dead thing into a essentially zombified life. Like that the monster's
Yeah.
a zombie for all intents and purposes. And not in sort of the cultural current sense that we have in this day. I wonder if would you say the monster's like the precursor to zombies? Is it like
I
the father of
I
zombies?
don't know enough about zombie lore,
I
like
don't either.
the origin of zombie lore. And also I don't necessarily know if it's true because I think some of it comes from certain cultural practices and we took
Okay,
inspiration from some of those, which is where some of the zombie lore came from because
gotcha. Okay.
I don't quote me on this, but I do think some aspects of voodoo culture is what inspired certain way like aspects of zombie lore and
Interesting.
stuff.
Okay.
And I don't again know all of
Yeah.
it, and I could be there's even deeper lore than that.
Do not
But
quote the deep magic to me.
okay, don't
Nope.
even
No, I know. I'm sorry. I'm
that's for
sorry.
the next episode because I'm about to go off because I have something I gotta say about that, but now I have to wait and
You
you've
do. You have
triggered
to wait.
me. Oh my gosh.
Figured.
So
No.
I definitely can definitely like I definitely see what you're saying as somebody who's also been raised a Christian and is still a practicing one and stuff. And it definitely is very interesting seeing Victor's attempts to do this because at no point does he like his internal thoughts at no point claim that he's a god. He's not like doing that. He doesn't do what he does in the like the character does in the movie,
Yeah.
kind of a thing where it's like I he lives kind of a
Yeah.
thing and
Yeah.
stuff. It's not like he is taking upon himself wanting to be like God. Honestly, he does all of this out of spite
Yeah.
to try to prove other people wrong
Yep.
because that is what has fueled him the whole time. And I do think there is some. I actually saw it's so funny because as soon as I started reading this, I keep seeing a bunch of TikToks where people were talking about it. And also, we're getting into that time of year where people are reading more
Yeah.
like horror and that kind of stuff, so it makes sense. But it definitely it's funny because I keep running into TikToks now with it, and one of them was talking about how and again I cannot make a reference to say this is actually true, but it was like them talking about how Mary Shelley was also possibly critiquing, and this is I feel like a big thing probably during the Victorian era, these intellectuals
Mm.
who thought they were God basically and
Mm.
like their direction like they just didn't have any like what's the right word oversight
Okay.
for some of the things that they tried doing. And I'd say that's for a lot of people who do scientist stuff. I mean, so the sad aspect about some of the things we know about science is because it came from some truly terrible people doing truly
Yeah.
terrible things to other people
Yeah.
and stuff. And that I feel like ties into one of the issues that Victor has, which I feel like is very prevalent in this first part, is he has no peers to critique things
Yeah.
or to be like question him. He is completely isolated himself
Yeah.
from critique, from any of that kind of stuff. And he even talks about as the book goes on that whole process
Yeah.
really messed him up
Yeah.
physically
Absolutely.
and mentally doing that whole thing that he did and stuff. So it's very interesting.
It is really
Uh
interesting.
yeah. Probably time wise, we probably want to finish volume
Yes. Yeah.
one. All right.
I have this is great. I have two last thoughts
Oh, okay.
of volume one. I told you this is going to
Okay.
be a longer episode, Brianna,
Yeah.
especially the way we're doing this. I had completely forgotten about the whole Justine plot line. Literally,
Yes.
not a single recollection in my brain that that was she was even a character, that that was a
Mm,
plot, that there was anything along. I remembered that William had died, did not
yeah.
remember Justine existed. And the fact that we had to spend a whole chapter explaining her backstory because it's just really funny how 200 year I don't know. how basically she introduces a new character and then spends a chapter explaining her relationship to the family so that
Yeah.
you're like, well, she's gonna die though. We already know this. So I didn't get emotionally attached to her at all because I'm like, she's obviously, you're introducing somebody completely new. They're obviously going to die. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So that was really,
But
really funny.
this is pre a lot of those like, and also I feel like that's just a product of the writing of the time. Like,
Yes,
yes, Mary
100%.
Shelley did like emphasize a lot of things, but I do think there's like certain styles and stuff
Yeah,
that were like a lot more normal for people back then, which is a reason why like I have a hard time with classics, is because I'm
yeah,
like, this isn't a style that I grew up reading, kind of a
100%.
thing. And that
Yeah,
just I feel like is that's the way that things progress and stuff.
yeah, I completely agree. And it's just really funny to me that this is the style because with even with Walton, you're like, we get the amount of backstory that we get with certain characters, I was like, is this entirely necessary? I don't know. It's actually in part one and part three. I'll talk about it at the end of part three, but the amount of description going into the travel,
Yeah.
I was like, is
I,
this all? I have more to say in part three because there's a thing in part three I want to say about that. But
I was gonna say that Mary Shelley literally traveled to Geneva to get
the
like
sense of what it
the
was would be
sense of
like.
it. So
Okay,
like
I
I
respect
feel
that.
like this is a product of also her possibly falling in love with that area at the
Yeah,
same time. And also just like I've made this character who's from this area.
yeah.
Like he should love it.
Yeah,
So I
she's doing the research, and
definitely
I
yeah,
respect that. I was
absolutely.
sitting there reading, and I'm like, do I need a detailed play-by-play of their journey? And I'm like, I don't know. In part three, we do, and there's a reason for that. But
Yeah.
the last thing I want to say on part one is we talked about how Victor's a coward for a lot of things,
Yeah.
particularly how he handles the Justine tragedy.
Yeah.
Frankly, let's call it what it is, it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is not a coward. Elizabeth is
Oh
incredibly
no.
brave. And the fact that she stands up to yeah,
Magistrate or something.
she stands up to the whole court.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not going to read the whole thing. Okay. It may therefore be judged indecent in me to come forward on this occasion. But when I see a fellow creature about to perish through the cowardice of her pretended friends, I wish to be
Hmm.
allowed to speak, that I may say what I know of her character. Just Elizabeth is so brave for standing up to a crowd full of people who, frankly, have the mob mentality of she must, all the evidence, all the circumstantial evidence points to her, so she's going to die for it. She's going to hang
Yeah.
for it. And Elizabeth, not even knowing what Victor knows, stands up.
Hmm.
And then Victor says, my own agitation and anguish was extreme during the whole trial. I believed in her innocence. I knew it. Could the demon who had, I did not for a minute doubt, murdered my brother, also in his hellish sport, have betrayed the innocent to death and ignominy. Yeah, and the fact that he's so guilty and he just does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
While Elizabeth, who is just trying to do what is right because she knows what is right, because she knows Justine did not murder William.
Yeah.
I just think that she was incredibly brave.
Hmm.
And she deserved better
I
than
agree.
Victor. Anyway.
Absolutely. Elizabeth honestly is I feel like and we'll get to this when we get to the part, but like is the most tragic death out of the whole
Mhm.
scenario. Obviously all of them are tragic, but like yeah.
That's the one that hit you the most?
I think so, yeah. I knew it was coming,
Yeah,
like
100%. Yeah.
but I was like she deserves so much more than
Hmm.
what she ended up getting and
Yeah,
stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon, take us away to volume two, and we'll just spend another hour talking about it, and we'll do volume three, spend another hour talking about it, and then we'll have to split this episode into four because, good Lord.
Uh-oh. Okay, so Volume 2. As Victor wrestles with everything that happened previously, he decides to go climb in the mountains near his home. He begins to feel somewhat better as he does so, but as he gets closer to the top, he sees a figure come towards him. It is the creature. It implores him to listen to his tale. It is revealed that the creature was the one that killed his brother, but he would like to explain himself before Victor completely writes him off again. Thus, the creature begins his tale. After Victor ignored the creature, it wandered for some time in the areas near the town where Victor went to college, but it eventually stumbled upon a cottage with a small disused hut next to it. It found refuge in the hut and could view the small family that lived in the cottage through the hole in the wall. Over time, he found himself drawn to them. It was a blind older man, the younger woman, and younger man. Through them, he learns how most humans behave and even learns to speak and read by watching them teach another. He spends some time like this and even learns of the small family's past, but he still yearns for connection to others and desperately wants to speak with one of them. He eventually resolves to speak to the blind older man, as he has figured out that he, the creature, is afraid of his own visage. But things do not go as planned, and when the children see the monster before he can explain himself, he is chased off, and the family quickly vacates the old cottage. In a fit of despair and rage, the monster burns the whole thing down. He wanders some time more and ends up being drawn to Victor's own hometown, where he miraculously stumbles upon a beautiful youth. The youth is afraid of him and reveals that he is Victor's brother. In his rage, the monster kills William. He even is the one that plants the evidence upon poor Justine. As the monster ends his tale, he beseeches Victor to create another like him, a female, so that he would not be alone anymore. He then promises that he will go off into the wilderness with her and no longer harm anyone else. Victor, despite his anger, reluctantly agrees, and they part ways again.
It's just so much here, Brandon.
There's a lot. I literally, guys, if you've ever read this book, some of you know this, but I took out what most of the monster talked about during this bit, which was the backstory of that family and his whole time with them. Like, literally, we know all of their names, and I wasn't going to bring them up, but like, I have to go look right now and stuff, but it's not honestly important too much to everything. But he basically, the whole point of this section is the monster witnessing humanity and him being jaded by it after their reactions to him and stuff. And also the monster having to learn from another how to be a being. Cause like, literally, so the last time we see the monster is that brief moment where he reaches out to Victor. He doesn't talk. He is literally just aware of things and can't really speak or any of that kind of stuff. Then he has a couple of misadventures and things like that, and then he ends up with a cottage where he learns to think. He learns concepts of like family, connection, how to like what's the concept of what a door is, like basically like anything you learn from a child.
How to speak, how to read.
And despite the fact that he has this kind of pseudo community with his family, he's never actually a part of it. He is learning from them, but in isolation, because he is witnessing everything through this little peephole that he has between the hut and the house. And it's just wild to kind of see him learn from that. And then also you get really attached to this family, so you hear, like, I think that going back to what you said about Justine's like top past, like, we're given a ton of insight into this family, who honestly in the scheme of things means nothing to Victor specifically in his journey. It's mostly like, this is the monster story now. Like, this whole section is largely about the monster and what he is going through and all of this, and what he's learning through all of this. And it's an interesting like direction to go with it and stuff. And I feel like it was important to us understanding the monster, though, like, being fully honest, like, I get him being angry and frustrated and like that kind of a thing, but I feel like this is a good point for me to bring in one of my things. The monster is a reflection of who Victor is also, but in a bad direction. Even worse direction than what Victor's gone, where Victor would be like, when I said earlier that Victor created the monster out of spite, because he did, because that was like, he was like, I'm going to prove that the things that I am passionate about have like value. That misguided like spite thing turned into the monster, but then the monster also has that passion as well in him, and he's so passionate about wanting this thing that he doesn't have that instead he turns into his anger and takes it out on the people around him that don't do what he wants them to do and stuff. So like, there is some sympathy there for the monster, but he goes in such a dire direction with it that you're just like, wow, I keeping the sympathy through all of it is a little bit difficult as he continues down his path and stuff.
And why is that, Brianna? Because there's a quote that you said that I think now would be a really good time to bring in.
Yes. So one of the things, my huge thing about this whole book
Brianna's
is,
Brianna's subtitle for this episode
yeah,
is,
this would be my alternative title
yeah,
for this book, is isolation equals madness.
mm,
And that happens to both Victor and the monster is
yeah,
the longer they're alone, the more depraved and mad they become in their own
yeah,
different ways. And you see that with Victor, like during his time in college, he completely isolates himself. He
yeah,
also already has a tendency to do this
hmm,
because in his like in the first volume when we talk about his childhood, Henry Clerval is the only true like
yep,
friend that he makes, and largely a lot of the other like children I say, and besides Elizabeth,
yeah,
obviously, don't really speak to him and stuff. And Clerval's the only one that kind of I feel like has the right balance to Victor's like kind of like passionateness kind of a thing.
yeah,
Like Clerval is a little bit more down to earth, and I feel like can like anchor down Victor. And same thing with Elizabeth.
yeah,
So but when he's unanchored from all of those things that
yep,
keep him somebody who like he's like a balloon, honestly.
yeah,
Like his the one thing holding like the couple things holding him down, he's now like going a little too close to the sun,
yep,
like kind of like the whole
yep,
Icarus thing. And that's where like his downfall is. The monster is alone from the beginning and
yep,
knows nothing, and then the small comfort he takes from the thing that was grounding him for a time is completely ripped away from him, and he doesn't handle it well
yeah,
whatsoever. And that isolation became more isolation
yeah,
and made him even more mad, and both like more like mad and like angry at the world, but also just the madness overtook him even
yeah,
more, like thinking the only way to express this anger that he has was to kill the thing that was causing him to
yeah,
feel like this way, which was humanity, as he called it, because he doesn't consider himself to be a part of humanity because of the reaction to him and everything.
yeah,
And it ties into the whole like creating life from death and that kind of stuff that we were talking about earlier.
absolutely.
So isolation is a huge aspect of the story, and why I think it's
Hmm,
honestly the main core of
hmm,
the horror of this,
yeah,
because unlike a lot of other monster stuff, especially more modern monster things, it's not about like, oh, the monster's coming after me, or
yeah,
oh, like there is that aspect of it that the monster's looming over Victor, especially over in the next part and stuff, but like it's about the madness that comes from
yep,
their isolation from the things that anchor them and
yeah,
stuff, especially these extremely passionate people who get too caught up in the things that they feel and
yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. I completely agree, and I think there's so much to talk about in this section, but I think talking about the isolation and rejection
Mm-hmm.
also are really big because it's I know for myself. So when I'm feeling particularly low and when I go through depressive seasons or episodes or whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
that actually when I'm in the sounding chamber that is my mind and that's all that I have and I'm not taking it anywhere else, whether by choice or by just not having people around me,
Yeah.
that is when I'm at my worst. That is when if I just have the echo chamber of my own mind, that all I'm doing is shouting into the void and hearing only myself shouting back at me. And that is
Yeah.
so not helpful. It is damaging. It is usually at that point that there's like I'm low and I'm not doing well. And I think for Victor, the tragedy is in he has safety and security of relationship and people that love him so much and people who do not draw away from him when he's in these periods that actually go to
Yeah.
him. So Henry finds him in England and says, "What are you doing? Like, you're my best friend and I'm going to take care of you." He nurses him back to health because
Yeah.
Henry loves him. And he says,
Yeah.
like, this man is his best friend, his brother, and he just wants him to be well. And he's like,
Yeah.
your father's worried about you, your brothers are worried about you, your sister, cousin, wife to be is worried about you. Like
Yeah.
all these people that this location of warmth and safety and security, they're all worried about you and we want you to come home.
Yeah.
We want to bring you back into the fold rather than rejecting you and casting you out from the fold. And I think this is
Yeah.
where Victor and the monster we can compare them because Victor comes from a place of warmth and care and love and support and community.
Yeah.
And he is drawn into this isolation. He as in drawn by himself. He draws himself
Yeah.
into isolation, where the monster is created in that isolation and is rejected even from the only other being that is aware that he exists in and what
Yeah.
form he exists in. Um, that Victor's isolation is what drives him mad.
Yeah.
Isolation is the underlying disease in the monster, but the
Yeah.
rejection is what drives the monster mad because it
Yeah.
is Victor's rejection that he doesn't quite understand at first because he's thinking like a child. He's essentially a newborn child when he
Yeah.
flees from London. He
It,
falls.
but I want to clarify something.
uh
He isn't in London.
I thought he was in London. Was he in Paris?
No, it's ice. Nope, it's Isengulfed or something like that. I don't remember the
Oh,
name of the city necessarily. Um,
should
it's
not.
somewhere like a distance from Geneva, or like I don't really remember,
Why did
but
I think he was in
it's
London this whole time?
well, during volume three, they go across the water. I don't know if they stop in London. They do have to stop in England because they have to go up to Scotland and
Hang
stuff.
on. Ingolstadt is what.
Ingolstadt, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's really funny. You're right. He's not in London. Let me rephrase. Let me change that. He's in Ingolstadt, I mean. Um, okay. Well, lols. But yeah, I think just the it is the rejection that drives the creature mad. And of course it is.
Yeah,
Of course it is. Because as someone who has experienced rejection in a
mm,
variety of forms in my life, it is horrible.
yeah,
It's so deeply wounding, and especially when it comes from, frankly, a source that is not meant to reject you. So,
yep.
um, yeah, trying to think how deep we go into this. Um,
When
not
a
deep. Huh?
I'm just gonna say it, when
Okay.
somebody who is your parent rejects you in
Yeah.
whatever form that looks like, because
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
ways that we've been rejected in the form of a parent,
Yeah.
uh, it hurts.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like being fully honest, that's I feel like one of the triggers that I had with this
Yeah.
is I
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately sympathized with the monster and earlier on
Yeah.
because I understood that aspect of rejection because I
Yeah.
projected the parent child relationship on it.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's what Mary, honestly, I do feel like Mary had
Yeah.
some of
Probably a
that
little
because
bit.
of her
Yeah.
backstory. She was 18, guys.
Yeah.
It like it, I 100% could see her projecting that into this story. But
Mhm.
whether or not that was her actual intention, that's what I projected into it.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, I mean, there's a bit of the same,
Yeah.
for me because we obviously are siblings.
Yeah.
And I think, again, not to get too deeply theological about things, but there's something about this book I actually think is a deeply theological book. And maybe it's just
I
because
mean,
that's how I think,
Christianity
but
wasn't a large aspect of Victorian culture, so
yes. And I think there's a lot of beauty in it, even in its horror, even in its sadness, even in the
mm,
because it's not a happy book. In zero
no.
ways is it a happy book. But and you and I've talked about this that we don't tend to read tragedies because
Yeah.
we like the happy endings. We don't want to look at the horrors of the world and to say, "Yep, there they are," because we're living through different horrors in our own lives. So why would I want to
Yeah.
read more about scary, dark, evil, sad things?
Being
But
reminded of the worst aspects of humanity is not good for my mental health.
no, absolutely not. And this is why we need stories that have hope, stories that end in light. It's because we need to be
Yeah.
reminded that darkness doesn't win, that evil doesn't
Yeah.
win, that good and truth and justice will win in the end. And this is why,
Yeah.
I mean, hashtag Jesus, but also this is why we love superhero stories. This is why we love,
Yeah.
this is why we love Redwall, because at every point,
Yeah.
good triumphs over evil. You know what I mean? And even though
And
there's
there's
casualties,
tragedy.
yep,
Yeah, there's
Rose,
tragedy in it, but
yep,
they don't the tragedy is not the focus.
yeah, it
It's
is,
the community and care that they have
yep,
for each other
yep,
and them fighting against the things that go against all of that.
yes, absolutely. And I think what I loved about this book, and this is something I'm going to read again, maybe not in this year, or next year or something like that. But in a few years' time, and I would love to read it with like a book study group because I think that these classics are generally read better together, I think. And
Yeah.
this is an experience I'm having with these things because you want to talk about it. Some of the other books I read, I'm like, I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I won't talk about it necessarily unless I know someone who's read it. But there's something in the power and safety of community
Hmm.
that should be really good and wholesome and safe. But even I think there's also something in looking at Victor who had that and it wasn't enough for him
Yeah.
because I mean, again, not to get too theological about it, he Adam and Eve in the garden had perfection. They walked with
Hmm.
God. They had the perfect safety and relationship. And yet that still wasn't enough for them. They sought
Yeah.
after something that was never meant to belong to them.
Yeah.
And I think with Victor, there's a similar thing there of where he started in this garden of family and joy and safety and these yes, he doesn't have lots of friends, but he had two very dear friends and he had a loving mother and a caring father. And two younger brothers that he loved very deeply, and a community around him that was safe and whole and secure, and yet it wasn't enough for him. There was this
Yeah.
seed, there was this fruit that tempted him in the natural philosophy and sciences that he was reading, this thing that was in this perfect paradise that would become the undoing of his own
Mm.
life, and that he
Yeah.
would become the orchestrator of his own undoing, quite literally in creating a monster that he would then reject and that would come to kill everyone that he loves.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so interesting, and then what ends up eventually happening with Victor is a descent into madness, a descent into even more isolation, and then ultimately into death. And then for
Yeah.
the monster who is created in this world of isolation, and he not only was created, he's something other than human. He's not human, he's something
Yeah.
other than. And not only because his physicality shows I'm not human, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm inhuman. And
Yeah.
then he has this parasocial relationship with these people. And I think that was another aspect of this that I found really interesting because obviously they
Yeah.
didn't have social media. They didn't have
Yeah.
online friendships or online relationships with people. They just had like you probably could develop some sort of parasocial with the celebrities of the time and the higher
Yeah.
echelons of society and all of that kind of stuff. I think humans have been doing this for a very long time. Because I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like the gladiators in Rome, that I
Mm,
imagine there were
yeah.
plenty of people who were fans of the gladiator fights and fans of the gladiators themselves that had these parasocial relationships. It's like people with sports teams, where when their sports team
Yeah.
loses, they are devastated and their whole week is turned low because they
Yeah.
have their identity tied into this thing. With the monster, his identity was tied into this family that
Yeah.
I'm living vicariously through them. I'm absorbing the ripple effects of their love and affection for one another, but it's not
Yeah.
enough because it's like breathing. I mean, this is a terrible. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's better. It's like when you're walking around, someone has a vape and they breathe out the smoke, and you walk through, and it's this weird fruity smell, and you're just like,
Mm,
what am I breathing right now? That's
yeah.
what the monster is essentially doing is he's breathing in the aroma of something pleasing that
Yeah.
is being produced by people that don't know he's there. It's a
Yeah.
parasocial relationship because they don't know him, but he's
Yeah.
put all of his hopes and dreams and things into this family. And then when, okay, yep, interrupt, go for it.
Oh, I just think the thing that fascinated me about the family, and I cannot remember any of their names right at the moment and stuff, but like the thing that fascinated me about their whole family and stuff was that they also had a tragedy sort of in them.
Yeah,
And I thought they were going to be another victim of the monster the whole
yeah,
time I was reading it, but they actually all get away.
yep,
Like,
yep,
none of them are actually physically harmed by him at any point. And they actually have a happy ending
yeah.
despite having interacted with the monster and all of
Hmm.
that and stuff and like been a tangent
Yeah,
to this story and everything. So
that's
I
because
just
they
thought that
didn't
was
know Victor.
fascinating. They didn't know Victor. That's a good point.
Yeah, because
That's such a good point.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's really all I had to say is that they were not connected to Victor in any way.
Yeah.
If they had been, I would bet that they would have died,
Yeah.
or at least one of them would have died. But because they were removed from Victor, which is the source of the monster's pain, they got away.
Yeah. Because at
They were able to
no
live.
point does the story say that he's killed anybody else,
Mm-mm.
kind of a thing outside that. I'm not saying that he did try to save somebody one time, but
Mhm.
that honestly was one of the other clinchers to why people are like, he's like, I
Yep.
may as well just kill people, kind of a thing and
Yep.
stuff. And then also the one thing I will say, his first interaction with another human being, or not another, but like when he gets to the whole William thing, the
Hmm.
thing that tips him fully over the edge is when he figures out that he is
Yep.
Victor's
Younger brother.
younger
Yep.
brother and stuff. So
Yep. Which is
it's
really sad.
interesting.
So I just think the parasocial relationship thing is really interesting,
Yeah.
especially looking at our modern day where it's so easy to have a parasocial relationship with
Yep.
social media influencers, YouTubers, all of these things. And I think
Yeah.
it's a even people who create video games. And I'm thinking of when The Last of Us 2 came out
Oh gosh. Yeah.
and the actual death threats that people from the
Yeah.
game were getting because of choices that the creators of the game made in their development. And here's the thing, I totally understand disagreeing with the choice that someone has made in a story. Like, absolutely. But I'm secure enough in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with other people, that that doesn't affect me or my identity or anything because I don't
Yeah.
find my identity in those things. And even if I identify with a character that ends up dying, I'm like, well, that sucks. And then I move on because, maybe I cried, maybe I shed a tear or two because
Yeah.
death is inherently sad and we should be moved to grief for those things. And maybe if a character dies that and it's tragic and you're like, wait, that's not supposed to be, we should be moved to
Yeah.
frustration of like, well, no, that's an injustice and we want justice to be done. But when you then take the fictional thing and tie everything that you are into it, and then you
Mm-hmm.
decide to threaten the people that are involved in it, aren't even the people that created it, but just the people that are involved in it.
Yeah.
Um, it's really, really damaging and it's really, really terrible. And I think it's a
Yeah.
sign of the dangers of the anonymity of the internet
Oh
and
yeah.
online communication that it is so easy for us to hide behind the screen and to not necessarily have community outside of it, whether it's because we just don't know how to, or whether it's because we're unpleasant people to be around and so we are rejected by people around us, or whatever the reasons might be, where you have a
Yeah.
lonely person who sits alone all the time, has a work from home job, doesn't have any friends or community outside of themselves, like has nothing outside of themselves to help them, to shape them, to convict them and to challenge them to change. And then this is what the monster didn't have, is he didn't have that. He didn't have other entities or other beings around him to help shape him
Yeah.
positively. He had a parasocial relationship with his family. And yes, he learned some good things from them, but he also
Mm-hmm.
had an idealistic view of humanity from them. And when that
Yeah.
ultimately was rejected, when he was ultimately rejected by these people, that's what sends him into the deeper spiral. And that is
Yeah.
what then leads him to killing William.
Yeah.
And then also finding out that the framing of Justine was
Yeah.
premeditated, as in he took the locket and he sees her and he's like, I'm gonna blame this lady, and puts it on the
Yeah.
thing.
The monster also, I will just say, freaking lucky.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely, yeah.
so lucky.
I mean, in a whole Europe, he
Yeah.
just happened to stumble to Geneva. He happened to know where Geneva was, stumbled upon William, stumbles upon somebody else that is a part of his creator's household.
Yep.
But it was written by an author who wanted to get things done. And so she was like, ha, plot armor.
It's more, I feel like this book is more about the themes than it is about the
Yeah,
logic
yeah.
behind stuff
I
100%.
would
Like,
agree with that fully. Yeah.
and I feel like that's also just horror a lot of the time in general. It's like it's
100%.
about the theme and what you're trying to purvey rather than it is
Yeah.
about the like
Yeah.
whatever. And it's the same with a lot of like fiction, honestly, but
Brianna, it's been
yeah.
2 hours already. We have to go. We have to keep going. Moving on.
Yes, I know.
Part
Okay.
three. Take us home,
Part
Brianna.
3 is the longest. Okay. So, volume 3. Victor puts off the task for some time, but finds himself haunted by the request until he is given the opportunity to go with his friend Clerval to Scotland. Victor decides that this will be where he does the task, and they set off. He also promises Elizabeth, who has been deeply affected by both his younger brother's murder and her dear friend's execution, that they will marry upon his return. He and Clerval set off, and again he begins to feel somewhat better despite the horrors he has been a part of. But there's always the haunting feeling that the creature is nearby, and he can never fully rest. They eventually make it to Scotland, where they travel together for some time. But eventually, he strikes out on his own and goes to an almost deserted island where he can do his work. After a time, he has made some progress and also can see the monster from time to time, keeping an eye out. Until one night, Victor has a moment of clarity and destroys what he has had of the new creature that he had meant to create. The monster is angered by this and promises that he will see him on Victor's wedding night. With that threat, he takes off before Victor can stop him. Victor eventually leaves the island on a small boat, but soon finds himself lost at sea. He finds himself washing ashore in a small village in Ireland. He is greeted by hostility, though, as a man who was murdered nearby, and the townsfolk immediately believe he is a culprit. He is taken into custody and shown the man who was killed. To Victor's horror, it is Clerval. Somehow the monster had killed him, and Victor was taking the blame. Victor immediately falls ill and is down for months. Eventually, he is found innocent of the murder, and his father comes to get him and bring him home. Despite this harrowing event, he and Elizabeth still decide to get married, though Victor has the monster's promise in the back of his mind. The couple sets out for a small home that Elizabeth owns for their honeymoon to stay there. Victor wanders the halls as Elizabeth goes to sleep, hoping to catch the monster before he can do anything. But he fails. The monster kills Elizabeth, and Victor again collapses. He is taken home, and his poor father soon dies after, due to all the loss that he has experienced. Finally, Victor vows to follow the monster and destroy it. For a long time, they play a game of cat and mouse across the world, until we arrive back where we started, on board Robert's ship. Victor finishes his tale, but begins to fall seriously ill in the end. Robert is forced to turn back from the north due to the men being afraid that they might be lost at sea, and Victor soon passes fully without fulfilling his last vow. Much to Robert's surprise, the monster gains access to Victor's resting place and curses and laments his creator's death. The monster is now truly alone in the world.
Ooh, okay.
The last part was a lot rougher.
As in, for you?
It was for me, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it was just really, the whole thing is just really a lot. I guess here's the last few things I want to say. No, okay, actually, just kidding. I have lots more to say. Henry Clerval. Okay. I love the comparison between Henry and Victor from the beginning. We didn't talk about him a lot in the beginning, or the middle. But we'll talk about him in the end because it is, for me,
he's been a strong presence throughout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably the strongest, actually, because Henry's the one that went to Ingolstadt, not London. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah.
To nurse Victor back to health.
Yes. Well, he didn't originally. He just went there to visit and ended up becoming his.
Yes. But he went there to check on Victor, and then to nurse him back to health, and then traveled back with it. Well, no, sorry, Victor traveled back alone.
Yeah.
So Henry is everything that Victor isn't. He's charismatic, he's joyful, he's filled with hope and life and ambition that is not to the secret arts and knowledge, but just to experience life and to enjoy it to its fullest. He is the sunshine to Victor's dark, stormy night, basically. And Elizabeth is the sun to both of them. She is the thing that pulls them into orbit and controls both Henry's exuberant wild joy and Victor's dark, moody mood swings, essentially.
Yeah.
Henry's death in particular, like, yes, Elizabeth's was the most tragic for a variety of reasons, but Henry's is the one that got me. I didn't like cry or weep or have even a single tear, but it was the one that got me. Williams, because he's a child, and it's just any sort of time that a young person is killed is tragic. It's just Period.
Yeah.
The end. It's terrible. But
Yeah.
Henry's death, and in particular, there's one section that I took a little post-it note on. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna read this description.
Okay.
Um, I arrived at Strasbourg where I waited 2 days for Clerval. He came. Alas, how great was the contrast between us. He was alive to every new scene, joyful when he saw the beauties of the setting sun, and more happy when he beheld it rise and recommence a new day. He pointed out to me the shifting colors of the landscape and the appearance of the sky. This is what it is to live, he cried. Now I enjoy existence. But you, my dear Frankenstein, wherefore are you desponding and sorrowful? In truth, I was occupied by gloomy thoughts, and neither saw the descent of the evening star nor the golden sunrise reflected in the Rhine. And you, my friend, would be far more amused with the journal of Clerval, who observed the scenery with an eye of feeling and delight, than in listening to my reflection. I, a miserable wretch, haunted by a curse that shut up every avenue to enjoyment. Just, I wrote a note on this because, again, talking about the Mary's tendency to elaborate on the long journeys of things.
Yeah.
I This was a description I thought was really beautiful,
Mm.
even though it was going to make his death all the more tragic in just a few
Yeah.
pages. Because Henry is full of life and exuberance and joy. He looks at the nature and the beauty around him, and he is filled with awe and joy at just everything that he sees. And to
Yeah.
know that in a few days, he is brutally murdered by
Yeah.
the monster.
It's
And
not
just,
even a few days. It's like
it's a few
the
weeks, right?
time it's I don't remember how much
Because
exactly. I want to
he
say it's
this
like
is on their
weeks or
journey to
months.
London. So they stop in France, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's because a few months.
So they go from France to London to Scotland,
Scotland.
but at
Yeah.
some point towards Scotland, they separate,
Yeah.
and then we never see Henry after that
We never see
again.
Henry again. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like it's a series of weeks that they're traveling together. Then it's
Yeah.
a couple more weeks where Victor's off on his own.
Hmm.
So it's over the course of a couple of months that this all occurs
Hmm.
and stuff. Yeah,
It's just really sad.
it
Um,
is.
and there's this, yeah, and then at the end with Elizabeth, there's a line that says, those were the last moments of my life during which I enjoyed the feeling of happiness, which is right
Yeah,
after they're married and there's a big party.
yeah,
Um, and then, yeah, I guess my final thoughts on this in particular are almost like father, like son, how the
mm,
monster
yes,
has this pursuit of something that he desires, and it's community. He desires for Victor to make him a mate.
yeah,
Victor realizes I can't do that because what if she's even worse than he is, and
yeah,
he's already terrible and has killed so many people. So I don't know. Has as you said, a moment of clarity,
yeah,
and Victor then dies on Robert's ship.
yeah,
He can't continue. He's chased him over mountain and sea and tundra and all the things. And the monster comes on board and mourns the death of Victor.
hmm, yeah,
Because even as much as they were enemies, Victor is still his creator. There's a sense that I get from him, from the monster, I mean, of he experiences the remorse of like if only Victor was alive, then I would have asked him for forgiveness and I would
yeah,
have. But the thing is, you you can't ask for forgiveness after murdering everybody that Henry
yeah,
loves or that Victor loves. And yes, I count Victor's father's death as a tally for the monster
oh yeah,
because he kills four people that three people that his father loves, right? Because it's
yeah,
no, it's four because Henry
it's
also.
yeah,
Because I don't think yes, okay, the monster kills Elizabeth and then his father dies. The fact that his dad lost his wife first, not the fault of the monster,
mm,
not at all,
no,
but then William, Justine, and then Henry, and finally Elizabeth.
yeah,
Just of course it's going to kill an old man. You know what I mean? And
hmm,
so I count the father's death to the monster's tally. And then for him to Regret. Yeah. O Frankenstein, generous and self-devoted being, what does it avail that I now ask thee to pardon me? I who irretrievably destroyed thee by destroying all thou lovest. Alas, he is cold, he cannot answer me.
Yeah.
For the monster to, for Victor and the monster to have played this game of hide and seek, cat and mouse, follow and seek and destroy, frankly, on
Yeah.
Victor's part, and then for the monster to say, "Now in your death, I ask you to pardon me."
Yeah.
There's nothing that you know.
The thing is this actually clarifies also that the monster is also a coward because
Yeah.
he at no point actually takes responsibility for the
Hmm.
actions that he knows after a point are like he, despite the fact that yes, Victor abandoned him and all that kind of thing, after a certain point, the monster also is taking responsibility for his own actions for things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he, even in this, is another reflection of Victor in that it's a little too late. Like the fact that
Mm.
Victor decides to seek vengeance on the thing after he's already killed, it's after he kills Elizabeth that he makes, or actually, it's after his father dies
Hmm.
that he makes that distinction finally to do that
Yeah.
instead of after the tragic deaths of death and execution of William and Justine.
Hmm.
He instead is just like, I'm gonna annoy it for a little bit longer
Yep.
until XYZ. And then the monster just continues
Yep.
to taunt Victor and then ask for forgiveness when it's too late,
Yep.
kind of a thing. And it's like, what?
And it's so honestly convicting of when you make bad choices, when you make mistakes,
Yeah.
whatever it is, that there is there's a line that comes, and it's different for different people,
Mm.
but where you have to apologize for the things that you've
Yeah.
said, for the things that you've done, because ultimately, like, human life is finite. We're not
Yeah.
going to live forever. And if you know that you've done something wrong, and yet you're holding on to that shame or fear or rage or whatever for too long, it will consume you and it will destroy you. And
Yeah.
this actually you see in the monster as well, because what happens to the monster at the end of the book? He goes off in the north and he kills himself.
We don't actually know if he does. We just,
But he said he was going to.
yeah.
So
But
because
the monster is a unreliable narrator in his own thing, so it's like, did he really kind of a thing? Who knows? I feel like it's
yeah,
kind of left up in the air. Like obviously he says
I
that
don't
and he could have just done it, but
I don't think
I
it is
kind of
up in
felt
the
like,
air. He says, "But soon," he cried with sad and solemn enthusiasm, "I shall die, and what I now feel be no longer felt. Soon these burning miseries will be extinct. I shall ascend my funeral pile triumphantly and exult in the agony of the torturing flames. The light of that conflagration will fade away. My ashes will be swept into the sea by the winds. My spirit will sleep in peace, or if it thinks, it will not surely think thus. Farewell." And then he puts
but
himself from the
is the
boat.
monster strong enough to actually do that?
Yeah,
Is
I
the
think at
thing.
this point he is.
Okay.
Because while Victor
I
was
say I
alive,
question whether or not he is.
yeah, I mean, fair enough. But while Victor was alive, the monster had purpose.
Yeah.
Now that he's done, now that he's
That's a
dead,
good
like
point. Yeah.
the monster has nothing. There's no one that there is literally no one he's connected to anymore.
Yeah.
Victor was the only connection that he had.
Yeah.
So,
I do going to Walton because he's the one who
yes.
fishes out the story and stuff. I do think it's interesting we get the parallel of him losing what it is he
Hmm.
sought after in all of this. His though, I did want to say this. His came about from the input of the people around
Yep.
him and like
Hmm.
this is a dangerous endeavor. We could all die. And Victor at some point tries to rally them and that
Yeah.
helps him go a little bit further. And there are certain thing you could to be said about like pushing yourself to try a little bit harder to like that kind of a thing. That's not always a bad thing, but at the same time, Victor didn't have a community around him to be like, "Hey, look, this is freaking scary.
Hmm.
Maybe we don't want to do this
Yep.
kind of a thing. And in Roger's case, he did. And yes, he may be
Robert.
regretful for the rest of it. Robert, sorry. What did I say?
Roger.
Roger. Oh, it's his evil twin, Roger.
His evil twin.
Uh, that's his monster. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry. So it's a
For
terrible joke,
not
but
calling a monster Roger.
now
Oh
I do
Lord.
want
Okay.
there to be
Anyway,
a
moving
monster named
on.
Roger.
Come on, Brittany.
Okay.
Wrap it
So,
up. Let's go.
hey, look, we're both a part of this.
I know. I
Okay.
know.
So, I almost called him Roger again. Robert, he loses he also is not able to accomplish the task,
Hmm.
but it's for a completely different reason than
Hmm.
Victor's. Well, actually, Victor accomplishes his task, but there are huge consequences that come from it and
Right.
everything. And Robert is able to live another day and
Yep.
stuff and like go forward.
To return home to his family.
Yes, yeah, to his connections and his
Hmm.
anchors and stuff. It's kind of funny because it makes me think of a couple of like I'm not getting a little personal here. I lost
Hmm.
my job last year. It was really rough and everything, and I'm in my almost mid 30s, so it's
Hmm.
like when that kind of stuff happens, you like feel like, oh no, I'm a failure as an adult and all that kind of stuff. And then I have a friend who just lost their job, not to any fault of her own, but it was because the company fell apart for not
Yeah.
again it also wasn't the company's fault either. It was because of other extenuating things. But they were expressing that like because they might have to go back to another job that they used to
Hmm.
have, that they feel like a failure having to take a step back
Hmm.
essentially and go back to where they just came from. And it kind of triggered me in remembering this last couple of weeks when I was thinking about like I'm barely through my second quarter of a century kind of a
Hmm.
thing. Like I'm in my 30s. Yeah, tragedy
Yep.
can strike. This book is a good indication of
Yep.
that and stuff. But if, in the scheme of things, in a normal human lifespan, I have a lot of time left.
Hmm.
I have a lot of time to continue to have accomplishments, make mistakes. I don't need to do crazy vacations or buy
Hmm.
a house or that kind of thing. Like every person has a different timeline,
Yeah.
and we are not all beheld by that.
Hmm.
And I know Roger probably, or not Roger, Robert. One time you say a name wrong, and then it messes you up the whole rest of the time.
Janine.
Uh, yeah, Janine. Robert doesn't probably realize this in his thing. He just feels
Hmm.
like maybe a failure or stuff. But he does have like there's some hope in it that
Hmm.
he's still alive to try to like to do more, to accomplish more, to still be that like dreamer and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And Victor doesn't.
Hmm.
Victor can no longer be that person because he never fully took responsibility for his actions.
Yep.
And then also went down a direction that ultimately it resulted in his end.
Hmm.
Stuff. So
Because the thing is, Victor, at so many opportunities, should have looked at the choices he was making and said,
mhm.
"These are not good for me. I can see
Yeah,
the ways they're not good for me. The ways they for him like reject the goodness and order of creation."
yeah,
And he could have said, "I should probably not do this. These are probably not good things for me, and they're
yeah,
probably going to lead me down a path that is going to be very dark and difficult and challenging."
yeah,
Um, but he never did. He was so caught up in his own ambition, his own spite, his own self-pleasure and um caught up in his own self
yeah,
that he orchestrated his own destruction and created the means by which he would be destroyed.
yeah,
And I think that is what Victor was also trying to warn Walton about, was like, don't let your desire for something become such an all-consuming thing because it will kill you. And
yeah,
especially if you're willing to sacrifice other people on the altar of that thing,
yeah,
don't do it. Don't do it.
yeah,
And I think it's a good warning for anybody who has that tendency to be consumed by something um in any ways, of like, actually boundaries are really good, and actually saying no to something that seems like it might be a good thing you're not a failure for saying no to something, or you're not less than
Yeah.
for saying no to something because you might have bad feelings about it or something. That
Yeah.
actually there are things in this world that do just bring death and that do lead you down really dark paths and are not good. And it's okay to be like, even though I'm attracted to those things and I'm drawn to them in some way, I can say no. And I have the autonomy in me to be like, maybe not. Maybe not a
Yeah.
good thing for me to go down, a good path for me to go down, and to have the people who have walked down that path. Because again, what Robert has what Victor didn't. See, Robert
Hmm.
has Victor who walked down that path to say,
Yeah.
"Don't do it. It's not good down here. It will lead to your death." And Victor didn't have that. He
Yeah.
had to be the one to live it, and then Robert got to be the one that learned the lesson from
Benefited.
him.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think. Do you have any other like final thoughts? Because
Um, Not really anything I feel like that goes with what we've already talked about and stuff.
nothing new,
There
novel.
I did find it interesting. There was multiple times that um Mary Shelley with her characters critiqued colonialism
Hmm.
during this.
Yeah,
And this is 1818
yeah.
kind of a thing, like full-blown British Empire
Hmm.
stuff going on. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then also her yeah, I'll just say that. That was the thing that really stood out to me was
Hmm.
her critique of colonialism.
Yeah.
And I'm like, very rarely do I see that take from any media
Yeah.
like that is centered around that time period. Very rarely.
Yeah.
Like it's very interesting.
That was really
Um,
interesting.
yeah, that honestly was one of the other things, and it doesn't really apply to the story. Like it did
Hmm.
actually, because there was a slightly going off this, uh, in the part where the monster was learning
Hmm.
from the family, there was talk about like this is actually more in depth about like things like colonialism and
Hmm.
conquering, and he's like human on human violence basically
Hmm.
was like an aspect that was talked about and stuff. And he's like, I don't understand. Like he didn't
Yep.
understand. Like he understood the depravity of humanity
Yeah.
through those examples and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just a very interesting take from somebody, and it actually makes sense from her background because her father was also something I forget what he was exactly. It was like it's not surprising he was a political philosopher is what it was.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's no wonder she um probably had like some of the thoughts that she did, and especially if
Yeah.
his political philosophy went maybe a little bit, and I don't even know what his whole like shtick was either. So like she could have been like against him, like going the other opposite direction of his philosophy, or it could have been in line with what she grew up with and
Yeah.
stuff around. Because her family was pretty well off and interact with a lot of people. I did also find out though. Oh no, wait, that was Jane Austen. Sorry, I was getting Jane Austen lore mixed up with Mary Shelley there for a second.
That's really funny.
It was really funny when I found out that Jane Austen hated the king of the time, and then which actually was like the George guy or
King
whatever,
George.
but yeah, King George, but he loved her stuff.
Ah,
Yeah, and it was because if I remember correctly, it was the treatment of the way that he treated his wife or something. I don't
mhm.
remember what it was, but yeah,
That's
uh,
fascinating.
yeah, it's so fascinating figuring out the like relations and things between authors from like centuries ago
Yeah.
and how that influenced who they are and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and that's a very big thing I feel like with Mary,
Yeah.
uh, very heavily influenced by the things around her, and that's just general writers. Like every
Yeah.
writer is influenced by the things that they believe.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
like
100%.
yeah,
Totally. I feel like we talked about this recently in an episode. I can't remember which one though.
it wouldn't surprise me. It becomes a big one because a lot
Yeah.
of people are like, "Why won't you read a certain author?" And I'm like, "Because they believe in this." And they're
Mm.
like, "But books shouldn't be political." And I'm like, "Well, they make it political
Mhm.
because despite what they might be thinking when they're writing it, their stuff comes through
Mhm.
it and everything."
We are shaped
So,
by the things we write are shaped by what we believe, and we are shaped by the things that we read.
yes,
So,
exactly. And that's why sometimes I'm like, yeah, maybe the thing that they believe in isn't like a as big of a thing as certain other stuff. But I'm like, I have only so much time to read.
Yep.
If I don't agree with an author on some aspect of it and I don't have any emotional investment
Hmm.
in the story that they told because of some nostalgic reason, I'm just not going to read them because I
Hmm.
don't have time for that.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I totally respect that. We only have so much time in this world, and why waste it reading something you don't really want to read?
Yeah.
Except when you're doing it for a podcast. LOL. Emma, sorry. I'm sorry, Emma. I want to read it, but it's so hard.
I do want to say I want us to try like Sense and Sensibility or Pride
Ugh.
and Prejudice. Uh but I will see
I'll
what
also get the
happens.
audiobooks to those because I think that is going to be a way for the problem is with certain things I like to take notes and I can't take notes when I'm listening to the audiobook because I'm
Yeah.
probably playing a video game while I'm listening to it.
Yeah,
That's a
true.
tragedy. So,
Yeah.
okay, Brianna, it's time for us to talk about our nostalgia rating for Frankenstein.
Yes. Yeah. I'll go first
Yeah,
real quick.
get it,
So
girl.
for me, I as a nos being fully honest, as a nostalgia rating, it's
Sure.
like a 3 because I
Mhm.
have barely any like nostalgic connections to Frankenstein
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So it's not something that I like feel particularly like nostalgic about. So I don't know a lot about the lore, but I do know some things because I watch pop culture things. Like
yeah. Right.
we
Yeah.
talked about one not on this episode, but
Yeah.
previously we talked about like there's a Frankenstein in the 2000s Van Helsing movie. I
Okay.
feel like it was you I talked to
It
about
might have
this.
been it might have been.
It
But
might have been,
it might have been you might have been telling me this while I was doing something else.
maybe.
Oh, I may not have been
You
listening.
you're I don't remember it. So there's like a version of Frankenstein. So I know of
Yeah.
Frankenstein pop culture wise, but I
And
don't
VeggieTales
know
too.
VeggieTales. I forgot. That's like one of their first
God
episodes
is
too.
bigger than the boogeyman.
Boogeyman.
Exactly.
Uh
I didn't put
my
anything more than 20 seconds of that. I was look at fine.
my coworker who is not religious anymore, but
Mhm.
grew up Mormon, still
Ah,
loves those and stuff.
it's because
So
they're honestly bangers. The
they
God of
are.
Second Chances from Jonah. I'm sorry, you've got
Hmm.
a black gospel choir as the angels singing in the belly of the fish.
Yes.
Can it get better?
Yeah. And yeah, nothing to do with
Anyway,
Frankenstein at that point.
sorry.
Great. That's actually a nostalgic episode that we could do, possibly. Season 2, baby. Yeah. So that's my rating is like a 3, like in the middle, because I have
Okay,
pop culture nostalgia for it, but not deep.
sure. I like the pop culture nostalgia as a concept.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say, gosh, I think probably a 4 star or even 4.5. And my
Mm,
reasoning for that is because I read it when I was in high school.
yeah.
I frankly don't remember. I don't remember a lot of the plot, or I didn't remember as I was engaging in it. I remembered sort of the big things. I remembered that, everybody in Victor's life died. I remembered
Yeah.
the monster was intelligent and talked, and I remembered that like they chased each other to the edge of the world, kind of a thing. Those are the
Yeah.
basically the things I remember. I think my actual nostalgia for it comes from the video that I did with my
Yeah.
friends, comes from remembering bits and pieces, the cultural nostalgia for it as
Yep.
well. And I would love to actually watch the movies and to see how much of a deviation they are from
Yeah.
the actual storyline. And also like the new movie coming out. I mean, I may or may not watch. I don't know. It depends on how horrible, like horror vibes it's actually looking like. Um,
Yeah. I won't go into that.
yeah.
If it's a Del Toro movie, it's a little bit of a toss up
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
how much horror like how much the horror that like I like monster horror, so like
Yeah.
some of his stuff's great for me, but
Yeah.
other parts he goes a little bit too like in
Yeah.
depth to the other aspects that
Uh-huh.
I don't quite enjoy. So
Yeah, yeah. Especially with Frankenstein, there's a lot of potential for body horror
Yes.
So I'm not.
That is
I'm.
something that he does.
Yeah. So we'll see if I watch that. So yeah, I think for me it'd be a 4.5.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It's a good rating.
Do you have any other thoughts other than the
No, I
ones you
do
just
not.
gave me?
No, that's it.
Okay. I also, that's not true. I have so many thoughts, but none that I think we should share at this time because we have been at it for too many hours.
Yep.
Um, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this extremely long episode of the Readers Clubhouse. If you like this discussion and you want to hear even more very long episodes of discussions, you can find us on YouTube sometimes and Spotify every other Friday. You can check out our episode description for our social media accounts and join us in the next join us in the clubhouse next time as we discuss our next, I guess, the mini series in our season 1 on the Chronicles of Narnia, beginning with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm very excited personally to get into this because I have so many thoughts about so many things, and you clearly do too, as we had to stop ourselves from you from saying something earlier.
You just triggered the one large thought that I had, so I don't have as many thoughts. I feel like.
I have many.
Yes,
especially when we get to the second episode, which is about Prince Caspian and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
I imagine that you do.
So many thoughts. Right, friends. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.